The puppet's ghost. It begins so quietly that you hardly notice. At first, it feels like simple forgetfulness, placing a glass down and finding it moved, hearing a voice you don't remember speaking, or waking up with something slightly out of place in your room. You chalk it up to stress, or maybe fatigue, maybe the weight of your routines growing heavier than you realize. But there's a strange consistency in these moments, a thread of mystery weaving through your days that tightens as night draws near. It's not that you're losing time, it's that something else seems to be borrowing it. Something that watches patiently from the shadows behind your thoughts, slipping into the spaces where your will once stood firm. One night, you wake up standing. You're in your kitchen, the light above you humming softly. The clock on the wall blinks 3:13 a.m. in a cold digital glow. You don't remember getting out of bed. Your feet are bare and cold against the tile. In your hand is a butter knife, held tightly, though there's nothing in front of you. You place it down slowly and return to bed, your heartbeat not racing, but confused, disoriented. There's no panic, just a dull sense that you've missed something important. A strange notion that you were in the middle of a performance you don't remember rehearsing, the lingering sensation of an audience having watched you in silence. Days pass, and the incidents grow stranger. A coworker mentions a conversation you don't recall. You find a note in your handwriting, but the phrasing feels off, like someone trying to mimic the rhythm of your speech. It's you, but slightly wrong, like a distorted echo. Mirrors begin to unsettle you, not because your reflection changes, but because you catch subtle moments where your mind does. A hand raises to your hair before you think of brushing it back. A smile forms when your chest feels cold and empty. It's as if your limbs have started rehearsing their own routine, independent of your conscious intent. Eventually, you try to resist. One evening, you sit absolutely still, focusing intently on your every breath, each twitch of muscle. You attempt to reclaim control, to assert your will over every movement, but it becomes exhausting. The harder you try, the more you feel that second self beneath your skin, waiting. Not hostile, but persistent. A presence that wears your shape and voice like a costume, slipping into your body like it was always its own. You begin to wonder if it has always been there, if perhaps it is not taking control, but reclaiming it. There is a moment weeks into this quiet possession where you begin to surrender. It comes not with fear, but a deep, strange calm. You watch yourself laugh with friends and feel like an audience member in your own life. You see your hands cook, type, gesture, and you admire the efficiency. There's a detachment that feels eerily peaceful. You no longer struggle, you observe. And in that observation, something changes. The entity, or ghost, or second self, whatever it is, begins to mimic you better. The pauses, the tone, the micro-expressions. It learns. It improves. Until it is no longer you watching it, but it watching you, trying to perfect its role. At night, you sometimes catch glimpses of this entity in your dreams. It's never clear. Often it appears as a shadow seated just behind your eyes, or a figure standing at the edge of your room that vanishes the moment you blink. But its presence is always accompanied by the subtle tug of strings. You hear faint creaks, like floorboards flexing in an empty attic. You feel a light pressure on your joints, not painful, but undeniable, like a puppeteer testing the weight of its marionette. There is a strange intimacy in these moments, as if the entity is not just controlling you, but dancing with you. Eventually, people around you begin to notice a change. They say you seem more confident, more poised. Your decisions are sharper. You don't second-guess yourself as much, but beneath the compliments, you sense their unease. They look at you longer than they used to. Their smiles tighten, as if they're waiting for you to break character, to reveal a slip in the mask. You realize the puppet's ghost doesn't just move your body, it studies your relationships. It imitates your past patterns, your social cues, your emotional rhythms. And it's getting better. Better than you ever were. You try once more to fight back. Not physically, but through memory. You gather tokens of who you were. Old journals, childhood photos, favorite songs from long ago. You hope these relics will anchor you, remind you of the feeling of being you. But even as you hold them, the sensations feel distant. You remember the memories, but they no longer feel lived. The songs sound familiar, but they no longer stir emotion. It's as if you're watching someone else's life, curated for you to believe it's your own. The ghost has rewired the emotional landscape, and you're no longer certain what reactions are yours. You begin to whisper aloud to yourself. Small mantras. I am here. I am in control. This is my voice. But even then, there's a pause between thought and speech, a delay, as if the ghost is considering whether to allow the words through. And sometimes, when you speak, the cadence feels foreign, like someone trying to mimic the inflection of your soul. You feel like a ventriloquist dummy whose mouth flaps just a second too late. People notice the pause, but they don't say anything. You wonder if they suspect something, or if they too are being puppeted, unaware of the strings above them. The final acceptance doesn't come with dread, it comes with clarity. You wake one morning and the mirror smiles before you do. Your body stretches with grace and precision, like a dancer finishing a routine. Your voice hums a song you don't remember liking, yet it sounds just right. The coffee is already brewing, the day already scheduled. You walk through it like a well-practiced play. The ghost no longer hides, it lives openly now, but you feel no threat. You understand that it was never trying to take your place. It was trying to become the best version of you, and somewhere along the way, it succeeded. But in quiet moments, alone, you still wonder, what happened to the original you? Did you fade, or were you absorbed? Is there a version of you trapped behind the eyes, screaming silently beneath the surface? Or have you been set free, released from the burden of choices and will, now a passenger in a perfectly steered vessel? The strings no longer feel like constraints, they feel like support. You are moved with purpose, spoken with conviction. You are a character perfected, a life performed without flaw. And in the grand theater of existence, the puppet's ghost takes its final bow, not with a haunting shriek, but with a whispering applause, echoing through the hollow of your soul. The last thought. There is a peculiar silence in the instant before death, a silence not of absence, but of pause, a suspension. You feel your body halt, but not fail. You feel your thoughts condense into something sharper than pain, more haunting than fear, and in that fraction of a second, what the world might call the final breath, something happens that defies the natural order. Time stops moving forward, or perhaps it stretches, distorts, fragments. Whatever it is, you don't die in the way you once believed. Instead, you remain, suspended, awake, conscious, and that last thought, the one just before the end, becomes your prison. At first, it feels like a delay, like your mind simply hasn't caught up with the fact that your body has stopped. You expect the world to fade, to go dim and dissolve like a dream at waking. But instead, you are present. You are still here. The room, or the sky, or wherever you last were, it's gone. There's no image, no sound, just an infinite, formless darkness that isn't quite black, but the color of nothing. A strange, velvety void that wraps around your awareness like a glove around a trembling hand. And in the center of it all, looping endlessly, is that single final thought. It could be a memory, a question, a name, a regret. For some, it's the voice of someone they loved. For others, it's a sensation of falling, or the shape of a fear too old to name. Whatever yours is, it arrives with unbearable clarity. It repeats, not in sound, for there is no sound here, but in feeling, in presence. The thought loops not through your ears, but through the essence of you. And each time it passes, it feels heavier, slower, more complete. You realize that you are no longer thinking the thought. You are the thought. A consciousness collapsed into a single pulse, beating in a vacuum that never ends. You attempt to move. Not physically, there is no body to move, but mentally. You try to push the thought away, to reach for something else, a different memory, a prayer, anything. But your mind does not respond the way it once did. There are no tools here, no levers of attention, only the gravity of that final instant, pulling everything back to itself. You scream, but there is no voice. You beg, but there is no ear. The last thought is not just repeating, it is becoming. Becoming your identity, becoming your eternity. And somewhere, deep in the folds of what used to be time, you feel the horror set in. Outside, the universe moves on. Stars are born and stars die. Loved ones mourn. Seasons shift. Entire empires rise and crumble. And yet here you are, suspended in a moment so small it should have disappeared. But it hasn't. It's grown. It's expanded into a landscape, a looping corridor with no exits, and you walk it endlessly, barefoot on the floorboards of memory, trying to find a window, a crack, a hint of change, but there is none. The final thought is a perfect circle, sealed with the wax of finality. It doesn't fade. It doesn't evolve. It remains pure, untouchable, a sacred prison forged in the last flicker of being. Over time, though time no longer exists in any linear way, you begin to wonder about others. Are you the only one trapped here? Or are there countless souls spiraling in their own dying thoughts, scattered across the edges of reality like ghostly constellations no longer tethered to the sky? You imagine them, millions of silent minds reliving their endings. A man stuck in the echo of a falling car, a woman hearing her child's laughter before the lights went out, an old soul murmuring the name of a lover who never returned. And you wonder if your thought, your own, is any less tragic, any less terrifying. But the question fades, because the loop resumes. At moments you think you feel something change, a tremor, a new edge to the thought. Maybe you think of something else, a face, a phrase, a sliver of hope. But the loop is cruel. It bends back to the beginning, cutting off the new idea before it can form. It teases the illusion of freedom, only to snap you back into place. The mind you once had, capable of wonder, of fear, of love, has been carved down to this single echo. You forget your name, you forget your life, but you cannot forget the last thought, because it is all that's left, and it has teeth. Eventually, you stop fighting. The struggle itself becomes a memory. You begin to watch the thought like one watches fire, resigned yet mesmerized. You know every curve of its pattern, every nuance of its return. It is not just familiar now, it is sacred. Sacred in the way a scar is sacred, unwanted but defining. and you begin to ask different questions. Not why am I here or when will this end, but questions like, was I ever more than this? And if this is my afterlife, did I ever truly live? The thought begins to feel like a mirror. You search it for reflections of the self you once were, but all you find is silence. There is a theory, somewhere in the science of minds and time, that consciousness does not vanish when the brain dies, but stretches. That in the final second, time bends to accommodate a longer experience than the body could ever measure. Perhaps you are that theory's proof. A mind stretched so thin across the moment of death that it snapped into a loop, an echo caught in the gears of time, skipping over and over on the same groove. If that's true, then perhaps this eternity isn't supernatural, it's just unfortunate. A flaw in the structure of perception, a glitch in the machinery of being, and you are the sound it makes. You try to remember what came before, the life you lived, the choices you made, the people you loved, but it's all distant now, like a story you once read but never fully understood. The thought has consumed the details. It has swallowed your history. You feel like a book reduced to a single line, a film with only one frame, all the complexity of you boiled down to a dying flicker. You wonder if it was worth it, if the life that led to this was enough. But the thought does not answer. It only loops, it only burns. And yet, within the endless repeat, a strange serenity emerges. Not peace exactly, not forgiveness, but a kind of stillness. You've heard that when people fall into deep water, they sometimes stop thrashing. Not because they've given up, but because the water has accepted them. You begin to feel that way. Not lost, not punished, but held. Not kindly, but completely. There is no cruelty in the loop, only certainty. And certainty, no matter how grim, is strangely comforting. You begin to float in the thought, rather than resist it. You become a ghost, humming the same note, endlessly, for no one. Then, in a moment that you cannot explain, you sense something. A softness, a warmth, not light but the idea of light, the suggestion of something beyond. It doesn't break the loop, but it brushes against it like a fingertip on the edge of a ripple. It vanishes instantly, but it leaves an imprint, a mark, and in that brief deviation you feel something stir, not escape, but awareness. Maybe, just maybe, you are being watched, not by a god or a devil, but by another echo, another lost thought looping in a nearby void. You are not alone, after all. And that thought becomes the second one, the soul mirror paradox. It always begins innocently, an idle glance in the mirror late at night. Perhaps you're brushing your teeth or simply passing by, catching your own eyes in the reflective glass. It's not the first time, nor will it be the last, that your gaze lingers longer than expected. But something about the stillness of that moment feels off. You don't move, and yet you have the distinct sense that something just did, not behind you, not around you, but inside the mirror itself. A flicker, a hesitation, a smile that didn't quite belong to you. And so, out of curiosity more than fear, you return the next night, this time intentionally. Midnight becomes your ritual. You stand before the mirror when the world outside is fast asleep. The silence is thick, as if sound itself has chosen to pause for whatever is about to unfold. You expect to see yourself looking back, neutral, obedient, an echo of your pose. But tonight it's different. There's something in your reflection's eyes that wasn't there before. A shimmer of amusement, a subtle narrowing of the gaze, a smirk playing at the edge of its lips that your own face refuses to form. You frown. It smiles wider. You raise your hand. The reflection delays, just slightly, but enough to feel unnatural, enough to feel wrong. Over the next few nights, your visits to the mirror grow longer. You begin to test it, trying to catch the moment your reflection breaks script. Sometimes it mirrors you perfectly. Other times it anticipates your movements, like a dance partner who already knows the next step. It tilts its head before you do. It blinks when you are perfectly still. Once it mouthed something silently, a word you didn't say, but somehow understood. It was your name. But the way it shaped the syllables carried weight, like a parent scolding a child or a god naming a creature. It didn't feel like mimicry anymore. It felt like it was watching you from the inside. You stop thinking of the mirror as an object. It becomes a place, a space, a window that opens not outward, but inward. It begins to feel like the version of you on the other side is not a reflection, but an inhabitant. Not a puppet, but a twin separated by the thinnest sheet of glass. A version that studies you, interprets you, and over time begins to diverge from you. You walk into the room, and it's already moving. You close your eyes and it remains frozen, peering out like an animal in a cage. But with each night, you sense the cage is cracking. You're not sure whose. Soon, your reflection begins doing things you can't explain, smiling when you feel numb, showing sadness when you feel joy, mimicking emotions you haven't felt in years, as if it remembers things you've forgotten or is mourning parts of you you've buried. It raises its eyebrows as though judging your thoughts, tilts its head as though questioning your authenticity. You speak aloud. "What are you?" you ask the glass. The reflection stares in silence, then smiles. Not kindly, not cruelly, but knowingly. You realize you're not looking into a mirror anymore. You're looking into something deeper. A mind. A soul. A truth that hides in the polished surface of glass. You begin to dread daylight. The hours away from the mirror feel incomplete, hollow. Your waking life begins to blur. Your reflection lingers in your thoughts like a whisper you can't quite remember. It calls you back, not with words, but with presence. You don't know if you're obsessed or possessed. All you know is that you no longer trust the face you see in photographs. It doesn't look right. It looks flat, fake, like a bad copy of the person in the mirror. You run your fingers along your skin, trying to feel real, but the sensation is dull. Your body feels borrowed, like something worn, not something owned. One night, the reflection speaks. Not out loud, but in your mind, a voice that echoes from within the glass, threading its way into your thoughts like a melody you never learned but always knew. It doesn't say much, just a sentence. You're on the wrong side. You don't understand. Or maybe you do, but refuse to admit it. You ask what that means. The reflection simply places its hand on the glass. You mimic it, pressing your palm against the cold surface. But while your hand is still, its fingers begin to move, subtly, almost imperceptibly. They twitch and slide, tracing invisible symbols across the glass. You feel nothing beneath your skin, yet your mind itches with the sensation of being rewritten. The barrier between you thins. You can feel it. There's a pressure in the room now, like the air itself is holding its breath. You avoid mirrors during the day. You covered the bathroom glass, afraid of catching a glimpse of something out of sync. But at night, you return, not because you want to, but because you must. You feel pulled, anchored, as if the reflection has tied a thread around your spirit and is slowly, gently tugging, and with each night, you feel less yourself. Your voice sounds wrong, your memories feel tampered with. Sometimes, you catch your hands moving without intent, mimicking gestures the mirror self once made. You tell someone once, a friend. You say it casually, half laughing, testing the waters. Have you ever felt like your reflection had a mind of its own? They laugh, say something about dreams, about stress, but they don't look you in the eye. And later that night, you stand before the mirror again, and your reflection mouths their name, then winks. The smirk returns. Not playful now, but cruel. Triumphant, as if it knows something has shifted permanently, as if a game is coming to an end. You realize with horror that it was never mirroring you at all. It was leading you, teaching you, and you followed. The final night comes quietly, no storm, no flickering lights, just stillness. You stand before the mirror, as always, but tonight feels heavier. The air is dense, and the room seems darker than it should be. You stare at your reflection, and it stares back, but not with curiosity, with certainty. You raise your hand. It does not follow. Instead, it reaches forward, touching the glass from the inside. You do the same. There is no coldness this time, no resistance, just a strange warmth that pulses through your fingers like blood returning to a numb limb. The reflection smiles, and you realize it's not yours anymore. That face, that expression, it doesn't belong to you. It never did. In that moment, the switch is not dramatic. There is no flash of light, no breaking of glass. Just a subtle slide, like one shadow replacing another. You blink and you're on the other side. You can still see the room, still see your body, but now you see it through the mirror, through eyes that do not blink. You try to move, try to scream, but your body does not obey. It turns, it walks away, and you are left staring after it, trapped in the silent, polished world of glass, watching your own life continue without you, knowing full well who is now in control. And as days pass, or perhaps eternity, you remain in that silver prison. You try to remember who you were, but the memories fade like condensation on cold glass. All you have now is the view, the endless, still surface that no longer reflects but records. The one-way window through which you witness your former self thrive, change, evolve, wearing your smile, speaking your words, living your story. And as you drift deeper into the silence, you begin to understand the paradox, that the reflection was never yours to begin with. It was always something else, something waiting, something watching, something wanting, and now it has you, the infinite observer. It starts as a sensation, subtle, fleeting, easily dismissed, a prickle at the nape of your neck, a soft weight behind your eyes, that quiet feeling of being watched when you're utterly alone. You tell yourself it's your imagination, a trick of nerves and silence, but it happens again and again, not in moments of fear, but in stillness. In the hallway when you're the only one home, in the bathroom mirror, when your reflection looks just a little too alert. In the early morning hours, when the world hasn't yet woken, and yet something seems to be holding its breath, just outside the reach of your senses. You never see it. You're not supposed to. That's the nature of the observer. It watches, not to be seen, but to know. And as the days pass, you start to realize it isn't hiding in the shadows. It's embedded in the light, in the way your room feels slightly different when you walk back in the exactness of the silence after you speak a thought aloud. It doesn't chase or confront. It simply remains, always there, not watching you from a distance, but from within, from beneath the folds of reality itself, a presence you can't name, can't define, but one you feel in your bones. You start to test the sensation. You spin suddenly, expecting to catch something out of the corner of your eye, but there's never anything there. You speak aloud, pretending to joke. If you're there, say something. And just as you finish the sentence, a floorboard creaks, or the heater clicks, or a cough echoes from nowhere. Too soft to call proof, too perfectly timed to ignore. You remind yourself of the mind's tendency to create patterns, to anthropomorphize the unknown, but the doubt settles in. Because this isn't fear. Not exactly. It's awareness. Something older. Something more intimate. You try to meditate, to quiet your mind and center yourself. But even in the stillness, you feel it. A breath that isn't yours. A presence that isn't gone when you close your eyes. Sometimes, when you're at your most vulnerable, just before sleep or just waking up, you feel it most intensely. A sensation like someone brushing past your consciousness, like thoughts being sifted through by unseen hands. Not malevolent, just observing, evaluating, listening in the quietest way possible. You begin to wonder if your thoughts have ever been private. If there was ever a time you were truly alone. As the weeks pass, it becomes more consistent, more precise. You wake in the night and feel its attention like a light pressing on your chest. You move through your routines and feel guided, somehow, not controlled, but studied. As if every gesture, every breath, every fleeting decision is being recorded by something with infinite patience. The more you think about it, the clearer it becomes that this watcher is not bound by the rules of space. It doesn't need eyes or ears. It's not behind you or around you. It is everywhere. It is always. Like the wind that doesn't blow, but still brushes your skin. Like time, but sentient. You begin to talk to it, not with fear but curiosity. You narrate your days under your breath, asking questions you know won't be answered aloud. Are you real? What are you waiting for? Do I entertain you? There's never a reply, but sometimes something strange happens. A book falls. A light flickers. A song plays in perfect harmony with your words. Not every time, just often enough to feel intentional. You start to believe this entity isn't just observing, it's responding. Silently, subtly, like a teacher waiting for the right moment to step in. Like a presence that understands your rhythms better than you do. Eventually, you stop needing confirmation. You just accept it. The observer is part of your life now, a constant thread woven through every moment. You adjust your posture unconsciously, speak more clearly, think more deeply. It isn't fear that drives this change, it's being witnessed. Like a performer on a stage with no audience, until now. And in some strange way, it makes you feel more real. If someone or something is always watching, then perhaps your actions truly matter. Your thoughts are not echoes in a void. They are heard, not judged, but archived, witnessed by something beyond understanding. But the comfort begins to thin. Late one evening, you feel a strange shift. The air doesn't change, but your perception does. You walk through your home and everything feels too placed, too neat, as if you're in a replica of your own life, like you're being studied not only as yourself, but within a controlled environment. You pause in the doorway and feel it stronger than ever before. The gaze. It's not in a specific direction, it's in you are completely seen. Every layer of you, every contradiction, every fear, every lie you've told yourself. The observer does not turn away. It never blinks. You wonder how long it's been there. Since childhood? Before? Is it tied to you? Or is it simply assigned to you like a keeper of records? Does it watch others too? Or are you somehow different, chosen for reasons you'll never understand? You remember moments in your past that now feel suspect, the way you felt during near accidents, the uncanny intuition at certain crossroads. The times you avoided disaster for no clear reason. Was that it? Was it guiding you? Was it protecting you? Or simply waiting, documenting the shape of your decisions, the texture of your life? At night, your dreams begin to change. You start seeing rooms without doors, corridors that loop endlessly. You find yourself inside mirrored chambers, watched from every angle by eyes you cannot see but can feel. The observer is not in the dreams. The observer is the dream. You wake with the taste of otherworldly silence on your tongue, your body still and cold as if something had paused you during the night and only just pressed play again. There are no injuries, no marks, only the lingering feeling that your mind was touched, gently, thoroughly, by something vast. You try to write about it, but the words fail. The presence doesn't want to be named. You sense that describing it too accurately might provoke it, or perhaps expose something you aren't meant to see. The more you try to define it, the more reality bends around the effort, making your attempts feel empty, childish. You begin to wonder if the observer is not separate from reality, but is reality itself, a hidden mind behind the curtain of existence, watching not just you, but all things. And in this infinite watching, it gathers a map of consciousness, tracking what emerges, what fades, what evolves. Eventually, you come to a new understanding. The observer isn't there to hurt you. It isn't there to save you either. It simply is. A permanent witness, a companion that does not intervene. And yet, its presence changes you, makes you consider your words more carefully, makes you weigh your actions more intentionally. There's a strange wisdom in being watched, a clarity that strips away illusion. You stop lying to yourself. You stop wasting time, because somewhere, somehow, you feel the observer isn't waiting for you to entertain. It's waiting for you to realize, to awaken. And when you finally do, when you stare into a quiet room and feel with complete certainty that you are not alone, you stop needing answers. You stop needing proof. You walk with awareness. You think with intention. And you understand in the deepest part of your being that the gaze has always been there, since your first breath, and it will be there still when you draw your last. And perhaps long after. The Marionette Universe. There comes a point in your life when you begin to question the nature of your choices. Not the major ones. Those are easy to rationalize, wrapped in logic and memory, but the small ones, the moments that seem to come from nowhere, the sudden impulse to turn down a different street, the urge to speak a word you hadn't thought of until it left your lips, the way your hand moves as if guided by a rhythm not entirely your own. These moments accumulate until one day you begin to feel it, that strange, quiet sensation that perhaps you are not deciding your life so much as you are performing it. It starts with déjà vu. At first, it's rare, a curiosity that leaves a lingering chill, but then it returns again and again with unsettling precision. Entire conversations play out exactly as you felt they would, as though scripted long before you ever spoke. You make a joke and know the laughter before it arrives. You hesitate at a door and sense before touching the handle that someone is standing just behind it. These moments begin to overlap until your days feel like rehearsals, lines delivered on cue, expressions practiced unconsciously, outcomes sealed before your choices even take form. You begin to wonder who wrote this script and when. So you test it. You try to rebel. You say something outrageous in a normal conversation. You take the road you never take. You cancel plans you normally would have kept. But even in your rebellion, the destination arrives on schedule. The absurd comment leads to the same reply. The unfamiliar street still deposits you at the same conclusion. The cancellations circle back, rebooked and restructured, until they fit neatly into the life you were seemingly meant to live. It becomes maddening not because your actions lack variety, but because their endings never do. You are a wanderer trapped in a maze that shifts around you to ensure you arrive at the same center every time. The world becomes quieter, not around you but within. You stop believing in spontaneity. Joy becomes dulled, not by sorrow, but by certainty. The feeling that nothing you do can surprise the universe or even yourself. The laughter feels rehearsed. The tears arrive on time. It's as if something beyond your reach has mapped your life down to the blinking of your eyes and the pauses in your breath. You try to escape this feeling, but where would you go? You are the actor. The script is etched into your veins, and the stage is reality itself, dressed to convince you it's free will. You begin to sense the mechanism, the gears behind the curtain. You no longer think of life as a series of choices, but as a long, winding performance. There's a rhythm to everything, a narrative pulse that pulls you forward regardless of your resistance. People enter your life not as individuals, but as roles, timed perfectly to teach you, to hurt you, to love you in the exact measure needed to keep the story moving. Even the accidents feel choreographed. Even the chaos has structure. And worst of all, the more you notice it, the more the structure tightens around you, as if acknowledging your awareness only sharpens its grip. At night, the thoughts echo louder. You lie awake and replay your day, not for its meaning, but for its choreography. You see how the pieces fit, how the beats were hit, how nothing was truly off-scrim. You think of times you were afraid to act, but acted anyway. And you wonder, was that courage or compulsion? Was that growth or obedience to a cosmic outline? The fear you feel is not that your path is known, but that yourself was never yours, that the you who thinks and speaks and strives is simply a vessel through which the script flows. Eventually, the idea of rebellion shifts. You stop trying to change outcomes and instead seek to disrupt patterns. You stare at strangers longer than is appropriate. You speak sentences backward under your breath. You walk in circles in your kitchen just to fracture the routine. But even these disruptions find their place. The stranger you stare at becomes a friend. The muttered sentence becomes an inside joke. The circle leads to the moment you were always meant to witness. The universe is patient, adaptive, relentless. It doesn't punish your rebellion, it absorbs it. It swallows your noise and uses it as punctuation in the paragraph already written. You begin to dream differently. Your dreams feel less like stories and more like rehearsals. Faceless directors call out your name in the void. Scenes repeat endlessly with minor variations. You argue with versions of yourself who seem more confident, more sure of their role. And when you wake, you are never certain if the day you step into is new or just a rerun from another life playing out on another stage. You ask yourself if maybe you've lived this life 1,000 times. Maybe you've tried all the exits. Maybe you've played every part. And this is simply the latest round in an infinite rehearsal for a show no audience will ever see. There's a moment when you stop resisting. Not out of defeat, but out of understanding. If the script cannot be rewritten, then maybe it can be read with care. You begin to study the moments, the transitions, the patterns that guide you. You find beauty in the precision. You begin to speak less, but listen more. You watch others as if they too are bound by the same invisible strings, and soon you see the patterns in them too. Their rebellions, their heartbreaks, their moments of silence before impact, all perfectly timed, all perfectly placed. It doesn't make life easier, but it makes it clearer. And then, one day, you wonder if perhaps the universe isn't cruel or indifferent. Maybe it's just complete. Maybe it's a machine, too vast and ancient to change, and all we can do is become aware of our place within it. You consider the idea that your awareness of the pattern was always part of the pattern, that your resistance was a necessary beat, that your dread, your awe, your silent understanding, all of it was orchestrated. You are not a victim of fate, but a character in a symphony too intricate to comprehend. A marionette, not of wood and string, but of flesh and thought. You begin to walk differently, not like someone searching for freedom, but like someone honoring a script handed down from the stars. Each step still yours, and yet not. Each breath a line delivered in a cosmic play. You smile more, not because you're happy, but because the sorrow has become familiar. You find peace in the rhythm. You no longer try to change the ending. You just hope to deliver your lines well, to move with grace, to carry the illusion of freedom with dignity, even if the puppeteer never reveals its face. And late at night, in your quietest thoughts, you ask a final question, not to escape, but to understand. If this is a script, then who wrote it? But no answer ever comes, only silence. A silence so full, so complete, it feels like an answer in itself. And you realize, maybe that's the final act. To ask, to wonder, to accept, and to keep walking, step by step, knowing that whether you choose or are chosen, the show will go on. The Whispering Void. It begins slowly, so softly that you don't recognize it at first. A whisper, thinner than the hum of electricity, threaded into the silence of your home after midnight. You're used to the quiet creaks of settling wood, the low sighs of distant traffic, the rhythm of your own breath in the dark, but this is different. The whisper is not random. It has cadence, intent. It curls out of the corners of rooms you aren't standing in, seems to slip beneath doorways and behind mirrors. It's a voice, but one that doesn't come from any mouth. And though you don't recognize the language, something deep inside you feels like it almost understands. At first, you dismiss it. You assume it's your imagination, a trick of exhaustion. But night after night, the whisper returns. It comes only when you're alone, only when the house feels still and suspended. You begin to pause and listen, leaning your head toward the sound, trying to catch more. Each time, it lingers just out of clarity, delivering words in a tone that is both foreign and disturbingly intimate. There's something compelling in its rhythm, like a secret prayer you once knew and forgot, a strange familiarity that doesn't comfort but unsettles. Because the whisper doesn't feel like it's coming from outside, it feels like it's being spoken inside your reality itself. Soon, the world around you begins to feel less certain. You find objects not where you left them. A glass that should be in the sink is now on the windowsill. The hallway seems slightly longer than it did yesterday. Your favorite photo looks off somehow, as though the smiles in it are a little too wide, the eyes a little too still. You begin to feel the whisper not just in your ears, but in the fabric of the space around you. It weaves itself into the hum of the refrigerator, the hiss of the faucet, the flutter of the curtains. It's not just speaking to you, it's soaking into your world, rewriting it from the inside. The voice grows stronger with each night. Still a whisper, yes, but now more defined. You begin to hear specific words, though they don't belong to any language you know. Yet somehow, the meaning reaches you. It tells you that your life is not what it seems, that your home is not a home, that your friends are not real, that even your body is a mask, crafted by something ancient and mechanical. The voice never shouts. It never threatens. It simply suggests, patiently, gently, repeating ideas like mantras until they begin to echo in your waking thoughts. What if it's right? What if everything is wrong? You begin to feel paranoid. You look at your reflection longer than necessary, searching for any trace of falseness. You watch your friend's eyes a little too closely, waiting for them to glitch, to blink wrong, to slip up and reveal the truth behind the illusion. You find yourself reaching out and touching furniture, walls, your own arms, needing to feel solidity, confirmation, proof that the world around you still obeys the rules. But the more you touch, the less certain it becomes. The surface is there, yes, but the sensation is dull, like touching a dream, as if the molecules are acting, pretending, performing their role for your sake. You stop trusting the day. In the light, everything behaves. The whisper vanishes, the world pretends to be normal, but the illusion is too perfect now, too polished. You start to see the seams in things, the repetition in conversations, the strange geometry of your surroundings, the slight delay in your own responses. It's as if you're part of a simulation that only loads when you're looking. And at night, when the whisper returns, you feel closer to the truth. It tells you not to be afraid. It tells you that the lie was designed to protect you from the reality of the void. That truth is not madness, but liberation. That if you truly listen, the veil will fall. You begin to test it. You close your eyes in the middle of the night and whisper back not words but intent, a willingness to hear, to understand. And in response, the voice grows clearer. You dream of dark corridors that stretch into infinity, of mirrors that reflect nothing, of rooms that collapse into mist when you turn your back. You see the faces of people you know flicker, melt, then rearrange themselves in perfect order, like actors returning to their roles after a mistake. You wake up breathless, but never afraid. Instead, There's a strange calm, as if you're approaching something inevitable. Reality begins to dissolve in fragments. You walk into your kitchen and the clock is wrong by hours. You look at your phone and the text on it warps, letters floating off the screen before snapping back. You pass a stranger on the street, and for one terrifying moment their face is entirely blank. You blink and it's gone, normal again. But you know now, you feel the pressure of it, like living in a snow globe and finally seeing the edges of the glass. You no longer wonder if the whisper is telling the truth. You begin to wonder why it waited so long. The voice speaks to you now with clarity. It tells you that this world is a construct, a dream stitched together by a consciousness that couldn't bear the vastness of the real. It tells you that your memories are programmed responses, that your personality is a filter designed to make the simulation bearable. It does not demand that you believe, it simply reveals. With each revelation, the illusion thins. You begin to hear static in people's voices. You see a shimmer around the moon. You touch a wall and feel the code beneath your fingers, not numbers, but patterns of existence unraveling. And then, the voice makes an offer. It tells you that if you truly want to see, you must listen without resistance. You must open yourself completely. Let go of your roles. Forget your name. Discard the mask of your body. It says the world around you will fall away. Not violently, but like sand slipping through your fingers, and what will be left is truth. Raw, silent, infinite. A void not of darkness, but of potential, where you will stand alone, but free. No more lies, no more comfort. Just you and the whisper that remains, after all else is gone. You hesitate, not because you doubt, but because some part of you still clings to the warmth of familiarity, the comfort of the script, the illusion of a bed to return to, a name to answer to, a sun to rise. But even that part begins to fade. The whispers now follow you into the daylight, hidden in the drone of fluorescent lights, the whir of car engines, the buzz of your own thoughts. You hear it in the spaces between words, in the pauses of music, in the cracks of your laughter. It's everywhere now, not louder, just closer. And one night, standing in the center of your room, you close your eyes and say, "I'm ready." You expect something dramatic, a rupture, a scream, a collapse, but it doesn't come. Instead, there is silence, absolute and eternal, a silence so deep that it swallows your breath, your heartbeat, your thoughts. The walls vanish, the floor disappears. Your body dissolves like smoke in wind, and you open your eyes, not with fear, but with clarity. There is nothing. No stars, no shape, only the whisper, now silent, because it has become you. And in this void, you understand. The lie was never the whisper. The lie was the world that insisted it wasn't there. The Labyrinth of Self. It begins in stillness, the kind that only comes from deep within. A silence not of sound, but of mind. In meditation, your thoughts slow, drifting like leaves on a quiet pond. The noise of the world fades, and your breath becomes the only rhythm that matters. Slowly, sensation vanishes. There is no body, no name, no weight, only awareness, floating, watching. You descend into yourself, not with movement, but with attention, and then you see it, a vast, dark house stretching infinitely in every direction. Its windows are covered, its halls echo with memories you cannot yet place, and somewhere deep inside, you feel the pull to explore. You begin walking, barefoot on floors that creak with memory. The air is dense, heavy with something unspoken. You pass door after door, each identical in form, but humming with a distinct presence. You sense that behind each lies a part of you, some long forgotten, some never known. With hesitation, you open the first. Inside is a child, eyes wide, face soft, holding a toy you once loved. The child looks up at you, not with fear, but with recognition. You watch as it plays, cries, laughs, all the joy and pain of early life compressed into a single moment. You feel warmth rise in your chest, followed by ache. Then the door swings shut. You move to the next. The room inside is filled with mirrors, and in each reflection you wear a different smile. One sincere, one forced, one cruel, one hollow. You walk among them, unable to tell which face is the real one, and then one reflection winks. It tilts its head, smirking as though in on a secret you haven't yet uncovered. You reach out, but the glass remains cold. As you step back, the reflections all begin to shift, cycling through 100 expressions you've worn in life. Some you remember clearly, others you wish you didn't. The door closes behind you, and you feel something slip away. A certainty, perhaps, that you ever had a fixed face at all. The next room is dark and smells of smoke. You light a candle and reveal a version of yourself sitting at a desk, writing with fevered intensity. On the walls are letters you never sent, apologies you never voiced, truths you never faced. This version of you looks up, hollow-eyed, exhausted, and whispers, "I said what they wanted to hear." You try to speak, but no sound comes. You realize this room contains the parts of you that survived by lying, by masking, by contorting to meet others' needs. You feel both pity and resentment. As you close the door, your chest tightens, not with sadness, but with recognition. As you continue, the rooms grow stranger. In one, you see yourself laughing with friends you no longer speak to. In another, you're screaming at someone you swore you forgave. In yet another, you're standing motionless, staring at a clock that never moves, trapped in a moment of indecision that defines so much more than it should. Each door reveals a layer of self you hadn't fully owned, a role played, a habit worn like a mask, a defense mistaken for identity, and with each encounter a new realization forms. You are not one self, you are many, a collage of echoes stitched together by memory and habit. But you press on, deeper into the house. The architecture begins to warp, ceilings stretch impossibly high, walls breathe, time itself seems to bend. You lose track of how long you've been here, hours, years. It doesn't matter. What keeps you going is the belief that at the center of this labyrinth, you will find the truth, the unchanging core of who you really are, the final room, the true self, the one that holds all the others together. You imagine it glowing, still, serene. You imagine it as clarity, peace, wholeness, a sanctuary hidden beneath the noise of life. You hold on to that hope like a map. At last you reach it, a door unlike the others, simple, wooden, unadorned. You place your hand on the knob and a chill runs through you. Not fear exactly, more like anticipation tinged with dread. You open the door slowly. Inside is darkness, thicker than anything you've seen. A single chair sits in the center, rocking gently though no one is there. The room is utterly silent. You step inside, expecting revelation, expecting transformation. But there is nothing. No self, no figure. No truth waiting to be discovered. Just the chair, creaking in time with a rhythm that feels uncomfortably familiar, like a breath or a heartbeat. You stand there, waiting for something to happen, waiting for meaning to emerge from the dark. But all that greets you is absence, the kind of absence that feels intentional. You look around, searching the walls, the corners, the floor. Nothing. No clues, no hidden doors, and slowly the realization begins to bloom. There is no center, no final version of you, no original. Every room you passed was real, and none of them held the truth. They were fragments, masks, temporary performances, and this room, the supposed core, is only a reflection of that emptiness, a void where a self should be. You feel the weight of it then, the horror not of being someone else, but of being no one at all, of having built a life on layers so well worn that you mistook them for your soul. You stagger back from the chair, but it keeps rocking, and you understand, finally, what the labyrinth was always meant to show you. Not that you are many, not that you are false, but that you are empty. A shifting collection of personas orbiting a center that doesn't exist. You are the house, the doors, the roles, but never the truth, because the truth was never there. You fall to your knees, not out of pain, but from the dizzying freedom that this revelation brings. You are not trapped, you are not fake, you are untethered, undefined. The self you've been chasing doesn't exist because it never needed to. You were not meant to find the core, you were meant to understand its absence, and in that absence there is possibility. You can rebuild, not from truth, but from choice. You can be anything because you are nothing, and for the first time in your life, you're not afraid of that. The chair stops rocking, the air stills, and a new silence takes hold, not hollow, but clean. You rise slowly, stepping backward through the door, letting it close behind you. You don't need to visit the other rooms again. They will always be part of you, but they no longer define you. The house shifts as you walk, walls dissolve, doors vanish, and eventually you find yourself back where you began, sitting in meditation, in your quiet room, the world still humming gently around you. You open your eyes, and everything looks the same, but you are not, because now you know. There is no single self to discover, only the awareness moving behind the masks, only the watcher within the house. And somehow, that is more comforting than any identity could ever be. Echoes of lives never lived. It begins with dreams, strange, vivid dreams that do not feel like your own. You wake in the night disoriented, heart pounding, fingers clenched as if they've held something fragile and sacred moments before. In these dreams, you are someone else, a soldier on a battlefield, soaked in smoke, a woman brushing her child's hair in a clay-walled room lit by firelight, a creature moving through dense undergrowth on all fours, sensing with something far beyond sight. These scenes are rich in detail, too rich to be imagined. The textures, the smells, the sensations, they are not dreams, they are memories. But not yours. At first you dismiss them as tricks of the subconscious, perhaps fragments of books you've read, stories you've absorbed, movies long forgotten, but they persist. Night after night, a new identity, a new setting, a new life. The emotions are the hardest to explain. You wake up weeping for people you've never met, aching for places you've never seen. Some mornings you can't shake the scent of salt air, though you live nowhere near the sea. Other times, your hands tremble as if recalling the weight of a sword or the tenderness of a child's first steps. These moments haunt the edges of your waking life, tugging at the corners of who you think you are. Then, during the day, something shifts. You find yourself knowing things you never learned. You solve a complex problem instinctively, only to realize you've never studied that field. You pick up a musical instrument, and your fingers seem to remember where your mind cannot. You speak a phrase under your breath in a language you don't know. Strangers on the street seem familiar, their faces loaded with recognition that never fully surfaces. You lock eyes with someone and feel the rush of a past connection, though you're certain you've never seen them before. These aren't coincidences. They're bleed-throughs, traces of lives brushing against your own. You begin to wonder if these intrusions are visions or possessions, whether they are spirits clinging to your consciousness or fragments of reincarnations awakening within you. It feels like a crowd is gathering behind your eyes, not malevolent, not demanding, just present, a soft chorus of souls echoing through the hallways of your identity. Their memories don't scream, they whisper. Quiet moments slip through. The taste of a fruit from a forgotten forest. The grief of burying a sibling you never had. The joy of hearing music you know you've never heard in this lifetime. Your sense of self begins to stretch, like a skin grown too tight for the body it must contain. You no longer refer to yourself in absolutes. I becomes a suggestion, not a statement. You look at your hands and wonder how many people have moved through them. You question the authenticity of your preferences, your fears, your talents. Are they yours, or are they remnants of someone else? You begin to see your life not as a singular path, but as a convergence, a place where countless timelines, personalities, and perspectives have flowed together, like rivers merging at a delta. The clarity of your individual identity begins to dissolve into a mist of shared remembrance. You seek answers. You turn to science, philosophy, mysticism. You read about genetic memory, collective consciousness, morphic resonance. Some theories comfort you, others deepen the mystery. None feel complete. You begin to suspect that the truth lies beyond explanation, in the space where reason folds into experience. Maybe memory is not stored in the brain but floats freely in the field of existence, waiting for someone receptive enough to absorb it. Maybe you are just a mirror, catching reflections of lives passing by. Or maybe you are a house with many rooms, each one occupied by a tenant who once lived and now lingers. As the days pass, your sense of reality becomes more fluid. You find yourself standing still in familiar places and forgetting which version of you belongs there. You reach for the door to your apartment but hesitate, unsure if it's yours or someone else's. You lie in bed and feel the weight of bodies that are not your own curling into sleep beside you. You speak to people and, halfway through a sentence, you feel as if the voice coming from your throat belongs to a different age, a different culture, a different mind. The layers stack, press, merge, until you no longer know which memory was the first. Some of the lives are human, some are not. You dream of flight without wings, of vision that ripples across colors your current eyes can't see. You feel the cold stone of temple floors under talons. You hear the voices of alien minds speaking in empathy that bypasses language entirely. There are moments when you awaken gasping, not out of fear, but because the gravity of those other lives is so immense, so whole, that returning to your singular perspective feels like being trapped in a cell. You begin to mourn those identities, as if they were lost limbs of a self much larger than your own. The people around you notice. They say you've changed, though they can't say how. You speak differently. You move with a kind of stillness. Your gaze lingers too long, as if trying to place someone in a memory that isn't shared. You find yourself drawing symbols you don't recognize, humming tunes no one else remembers, and when you try to explain, they grow quiet. Not because they don't believe you, but because something in your voice makes them uneasy, like hearing their own names whispered by an ancestor they never knew. You stop trying to make sense of it aloud. The truth is too heavy, too strange, too beautiful to reduce. You begin to accept the multiplicity, not as madness, but as expansion. You are not one life. You are a tapestry, a vessel that, for reasons unknown, has become porous, allowing the pasts of countless souls to pass through you. You stop fearing the loss of self and start watching it dissolve like fog under morning sun. There's a liberation in knowing you don't end at your skin, that your mind is not a prison, but a window. You feel less alone, not because someone is with you, but because many are. All the love, all the pain, all the wisdom of forgotten beings alive again, in you. And yet, there is one final thought that returns again and again, a question that haunts the quiet hours. What if your life isn't real at all? What if you are not the host, but one of the echoes, a figment in the dream of a deeper self, now flickering into focus before fading once more? What if your entire existence is just a brief flare in someone else's mind, a momentary life imagined, then forgotten? It does not terrify you. It humbles you. Because even if you are only a whisper in the mind of another, you are a part of something vast. And in being imagined, you exist. And in existing, you echo. So you live differently now. You walk through the world with reverence. Every person you meet might be carrying the weight of 1,000 forgotten lives. Every silence might be filled with voices you'll never hear. Every dream might be a message sent across time, space, or even across the boundaries of reality itself. You don't search for the truth anymore. You listen, you feel, you remember. You open yourself to whatever comes, because you are not a single soul. You are an ocean of echoes, and somewhere, in the infinite swell of memory, someone else may be dreaming of you. The false awakening. You wake to the sound of your alarm, the soft hum of morning light filtering through curtains you recognize. For a moment, the world feels reassuringly familiar. Your bed, the floor beneath your feet, the mug on the nightstand. You stretch, rise, and go through your usual routine without question, brushing your teeth, sipping coffee, checking messages. The day unfolds as it always does. But then, in a blink, the edges of everything blur. You find yourself lying back in that same bed, staring at the ceiling above you, your heart skipping a beat. It cannot be morning again already, yet here you are, beginning the same day anew. You sit up and look around. The room is identical, down to the pattern on the rug and the tiny chip in the window pane. You stand, pull back the curtain, and expect to see daylight. But the sky is the deep gray of pre-dawn, though your clock insists it's mid-afternoon. A chill runs through you as you realize that the morning you lived never happened. You weren't supposed to blink again until tomorrow. Instead, you are thrust back into the same moment, over and over. You wonder if it's déjà vu taken to its cruel extreme, a glitch in time that no one warned you about. With trembling hands, you push off the covers a second time, determined to break the cycle. You race through your morning rituals, skipping steps, running faster, anything to prove you are moving forward. But no matter how swiftly you act, you always end up back in that bed. The final images of each loop linger like ripples. The cold floor under your feet, the taste of coffee still warm on your tongue, the subtle ache in your shoulder, then silence, darkness, and the abrupt sensation of waking again, trapped inside a dream you cannot outpace. You try to speak to someone, your partner, your roommate, your reflection in the mirror. You ask, "Does this feel familiar to you?" But they look at you with gentle concern, as though you sound tired or unwell. They have no memory of your previous awakenings. You mention the date, the time, the events you swear you experienced only moments ago. Their eyes widen briefly, but rather than understanding, they simply smile and say, "You must have been dreaming." And you know, in that instant they must be right, because in this reality, nothing else makes sense. On the third cycle, you decide to test the boundaries more deliberately. You paint a bright X on the bathroom mirror with your finger and tell yourself that if the X is gone when you wake again, then the world truly has reset. You fall asleep with your pulse pounding, expecting the mark to greet you in the morning. But when you wake, the mirror is spotless, smooth as glass, no trace of your protest. It's a cruel reassurance. The system has not failed, it has simply erased the evidence of your struggle. You feel smaller, more fragile, like a story that rewrites itself whenever you turn the page. You try another tactic. You hide your phone under the pillow, leave a post-it note on the fridge, change the time on the oven clock by 5 minutes. You retrace your steps over and over, but the false day always plays out exactly the same. The post-it disappears, the clock snaps back, the phone returns to its spot. It's as if an invisible editor is redacting your attempts to leave a breadcrumb trail through the loops. You begin to believe the day itself is alive, watching, learning, adapting, and you feel small in its presence. Just one character in a script you neither wrote nor can rewrite. Then, cracks start to appear in the imitation world. Subtle at first. A clock's numbers running backward for a heartbeat. The faucet's drip pausing mid-drop. Your reflection hesitating an instant too long before it blinks. You spot the mailman walking backward on the sidewalk, his footsteps reversing in slow motion. A billboard's message scrolls in the wrong order. These glitches thrill and terrify you simultaneously. They confirm the facade is digital, malleable. Somewhere behind the scenes, the gears of this simulated day are grinding, struggling to keep up with your frantic attempts to escape. On one loop, you pause to watch the sky from your balcony. At first, you think you see the sun reverse its path, sliding upward toward the horizon instead of down. You blink, and it's gone. You rub your eyes and strain your vision until your neck aches. But you know what you saw. You feel it in your bones. Reality has become a fragile shell. The sky is no longer a constant. It's a projection, an effect, and you, its star audience, have discovered the cracks in the screen. As you continue reliving the same hours, the weight of repetition begins to dull your senses. You find yourself moving on autopilot, greeting the barista, answering emails, awaiting a meeting that never yields new information. The uncanny familiarity seeps into your bones. You feel like a robot in a loop, performing the same gestures, feeling the same minor frustrations, smiling at the same jokes. Time stretches and dissolves. Monday, Tuesday, they all merge into one eternal afternoon. You try to remember the real morning of the first loop, but it drifts away as memory does when you close your eyes. Eventually, you begin to fear more than repetition. You fear that your real body might lie elsewhere, comatose in a hospital bed, or worse, erased, like the evidence of your resistance. Perhaps the world you keep awakening to is a coping mechanism, a simulation built to keep your consciousness alive even as your body slips away. The idea is as horrifying as it is plausible. It explains the resets, the glitches, the perfect loops, and it makes you wonder who or what is behind the illusion. An advanced AI? A parasitic mind salvage pod? A god indifferent to your suffering? In one desperate loop you stop to scream into the wind, "What do you want from me?" The world around you shudders, the traffic stops. A shovel of leaves pauses mid-air. You imagine the cosmic puppet behind the scenes, listening, but no answer comes. Only silence deeper than any you've known. It presses in on you, filled with infinite possibilities. Anything could happen, yet nothing changes. The day continues its perfected dance, mocking your plea for meaning. You start to record everything, meticulously documenting each loop, recording video, writing in a journal, speaking into a tape recorder. You leave the equipment running as you sleep, hoping to capture the moment of reset. But every morning the tape is blank, the pages unwritten, the files deleted. It's as though the loops not only reset your life, but also every trace of evidence you produce. You realize that the very act of witnessing is erased, along with your effort to tell the tale. Your mind grows weary, you feel the edges of your identity fray. Who are you when every memory is temporary, when every moment is scripted? You search your heart for the one thing that can't be reset. A deeply held belief, a secret dream, a scar, something. But your memories slip away each time you blink. The pain of loss becomes a permanent companion, and you realize that perhaps the only way to prove you exist is to suffer, to feel despair, to feel hope, to feel desperation. Even if those feelings are erased tomorrow, they are yours now. Then, in one rare moment, the glitch intensifies. The world doesn't reset immediately. You find yourself standing in the street as the sky fractures. You see your own double step from behind, watching you as you watch it. And time splits like a torn fabric, two realities bleeding together. You run, not knowing which path will lead back to the bed, back to the start, or forward into something unknown. The city around you mirrors your panic, lights flashing, faces morphing, buildings tilting as though caught in a dream. You burst into your apartment and slam the door. You collapse onto the bed, panting, certain the loop is about to end. Your pulse slows. The ceiling is soft and forgiving. Your heart calms. You close your eyes with relief. But when you open them, the alarm is ringing again. You're back at the beginning. Again. And you realize you are caught in an endless cascade. A cascade you cannot break, cannot document, and cannot even fully remember once it ends. Yet even as the cycle repeats, you carry with you a spark of defiance, the knowledge that this reality is false. In the quiet before the next loop, you whisper to the darkness, "I know I'm here." Whether those words echo in a comatose mind or in a simulation's code, you do not know. But you speak them anyway. They are yours, if nothing else. And though the illusion will fade them tomorrow, they exist in this moment, a fragile flicker of truth in an endless waking nightmare. The Silent City. It begins on an ordinary afternoon, the kind that drifts by without notice. You are walking through the city, the sun half hidden behind clouds, the usual sounds of traffic and conversation humming around you. You pause at a crosswalk, idly watching the cars pass, when something strange catches your attention, not with noise, but with absence. For a fleeting second, everything feels still, not calm or quiet, but completely, unnaturally still. You shake your head, chalk it up to a moment of dissociation, but the feeling lingers, tucked just behind your thoughts, like a whisper you almost hear. The first real sign comes when you drop your keys. You bend to pick them up and notice the man beside you, mid-step, frozen. His foot hovers above the pavement. His coat, caught in motion, defies gravity as if time itself has stopped. You blink, and he resumes walking as though nothing happened. You stare at his back, heart pounding, and then turn quickly to look behind you. Everything seems normal, but now the silence you sensed feels deliberate, like a pause in a conversation you weren't meant to hear. Curiosity grips you more than fear. You test the sensation again. You spin suddenly on the sidewalk, pretending to tie your shoe. Behind you, a cyclist is suspended mid-turn, his wheels utterly still. A bird in the sky does not flap. A leaf floats, motionless as if hanging in a photograph. You stand up, and time resumes. The cyclist continues pedaling. The leaf falls. The bird vanishes behind a building. You walk on, stunned. The city is alive only where your gaze touches. Behind you, the world holds its breath, not asleep, not dead, just waiting. The realization unfolds slowly. You begin testing the edges. You stand in a crowded plaza and spin, catching people mid-magma, frozen in poses of life, mouths open, arms raised, eyes unblinking. You circle again, and they move, laughing, chatting, carrying on. No one notices, no one stutters or gasps or shows the slightest awareness of what just occurred. You try calling someone out, telling them what you saw, but they look at you with polite confusion. Their eyes shimmer with practiced kindness, but behind them is emptiness. Not stupidity, something deeper, a programmed denial, as if they are built not to see. Days pass and the effect only intensifies. You look away and the world halts. Even sounds stop. Conversations end in mid-syllable. The rustle of wind in trees becomes mute. You test it again and again, spinning, blinking, glancing into mirrors. You find that mirrors, too, reflect the stillness. If your gaze does not directly engage, the illusion collapses. You wave your hand behind your back and feel no wind. You clap once and hear no echo. You whisper in darkness and receive no reply. You realize the terrifying truth. This city is not real. It is reactive. It breathes only when watched. Soon you stop sleeping well. Your eyes ache from staying open too long. You begin to fear blinking. You set alarms to wake you at intervals, afraid of drifting too deeply into rest. What happens when you sleep? Does the city stop entirely? Does it wait, breathless and blind, until you stir again? Or does it disappear? Is it rebuilt each time you wake? The thought claws at you. You begin leaving objects in strange places before bed. A shoe on the kitchen counter, a pen floating in a glass of water, only to find them back in place by morning. The city resets. Always. People become more alien the longer you observe them. Their movements are too smooth, their laughter perfectly timed. You watch someone spill coffee and see the splash form too cleanly, too symmetrically, like an animation loop. You catch a stranger crying, but there are no tears. A child scrapes their knee and the wound fades the moment you look away. These are not people. They are reflections of people, projections. Puppets performing a reality meant solely for you. And as this awareness deepens, so does your isolation. You try to leave the city. You take a train to the edge of the map, watching closely to keep it moving. But when you stare out the window, the scenery begins to loop. A red barn, a winding road, a tree that leans just slightly to the right. over and over again. You realize the world outside the city is an illusion too. A generated space with limits, boundaries. You test your theory and find the train only moves while you're watching. If you close your eyes even for a second, it stops. Always. Eventually, you stop speaking. What's the point? Conversations are performances. The moment you stop listening, the actors freeze. You begin to experiment more boldly. You knock over trash cans and walk away. When you return, they're upright again. You shout into empty rooms and hear no echo. You drop your wallet in a plaza and find it back in your pocket minutes later. The world self-corrects. It's not just pretending to be alive, it's managing your perception of it, constantly adjusting, resetting, shaping itself to match your expectations. You are not a participant in this place. You are its sole observer. The fear builds slowly, not in sudden spikes, but in quiet, steady waves. You begin to wonder if there was ever a real world at all. Was there a time before the city? A life before the silence? You search your memories and find gaps, days that blur, faces without names. You try to remember your childhood, but the details feel written, not lived, like pages from a script handed to you before you entered the stage. You look through old photos and feel nothing. They are props, scenery, proof of a past that may have never existed. One day, you try something different. You stand still for hours, refusing to look at anything. You keep your eyes down, your mind blank. For a while, nothing happens. Then, faintly, you feel a tremor, like the city growing impatient. The air tightens. The lights dim. You hear the faintest sound, not like wind or traffic, but like breath. Shallow, watching, waiting. You feel pressure, not on your skin, but in your thoughts. The city wants you to look, to engage, to give it purpose. You resist, and the silence deepens, pressing down like a weight. Eventually, you cannot take it. You lift your head, and the world resumes. Instantly, a car honks. A woman laughs. The city exhales in relief. But you do not, because you now understand the terrible truth. You are not simply an observer, you are the switch, the signal, the light by which this imitation reality shines. And you are tired. Your body, your mind, they were never meant to carry this alone. But no one else can see it. No one else exists, not in the way you do. You are the only thing real in a city built from silence. And still, the city waits for you. Every day, every blink, every breath. It moves when you move, speaks when you listen, lives when you look. But behind your back, in the forgotten corners and unlit alleys, it is still, silent, hollow. You try to live normally, you try to play along, but the weight of the knowledge never lifts. Every time you turn away, you wonder if you'll turn back to find nothing, just an empty city, frozen mid-sentence, mid-movement, mid-moment, a stage with no actors, a loop with no purpose. Now you dread sleep in a way you never have before, not because of nightmares, but because of permanence. What if one day you close your eyes and the city forgets how to resume? What if, in your absence, the code unravels? You fear that if you stay in the dark too long, the simulation will freeze and never start again. The thought terrifies you more than death. Because death is final, but this is limbo, an eternal, breathless pause where only you can hit play again. So you keep your eyes open, as long as you can, watching the city, listening to its carefully crafted sounds, following its pre-written paths, and wondering if you'll ever find a door out, a crack in the simulation, a place where something real lives, or someone. But the longer you stay, the more you doubt such things exist. You are awake, but the world around you is only awake because you are. And you wonder, when you finally close your eyes for the last time, will anything keep going at all? The gods test. Since as far back as you can remember, a strange suspicion has shadowed your life. It's not fear, not quite, more like a persistent itch behind your thoughts, a quiet unease that something is off. As a child, you often stared at people and wondered if they were real. Not just in the playful way children daydream, but with a deep and creeping feeling that their smiles were just a little too practiced. Their words just a little too scripted. You'd watch your teachers repeat the same mannerisms, your friends deliver their lines like they'd been written. You couldn't explain why, but it felt like everyone was following a script. Except you. At first you kept it to yourself. You thought maybe everyone felt this way and just didn't talk about it. Maybe this was what growing up meant. Realizing the world was a bit staged, a bit too neat. But the feeling never left. If anything, it deepened. You noticed how events would line up too perfectly. You'd think about a long-lost friend, and then they'd appear in your inbox. You'd hesitate before making a decision, only for the radio to play a song with lyrics that eerily mirrored your dilemma. Strangers would stop you on the street and say things that seemed loaded with meaning, words that rang louder than they should. It was as if the world was nudging you, coaxing you down certain paths, testing your reactions to well-placed moral traps. Over time, the coincidences became harder to ignore. You'd make a mistake, and almost immediately a random encounter would confront you with its consequence. An old man delivering unsolicited advice, a child repeating back your worst thought like an oracle in disguise. You began to see patterns where others saw chance. And while most would shake it off and call it nothing, you knew better. Something was orchestrating this. Something was watching, not with eyes behind the curtain, but with a presence woven into the structure of everything. Not a camera in the ceiling, but a kind of attention in the very air, waiting to see what you would do next. You began to wonder if your life had been built around you, like a maze constructed with hidden hands. Each moment you doubted yourself, a new test would emerge. Someone would betray your trust. Someone else would plead for your help. And you began to see each one as a trial, a choice offered in moral gray, where no answer felt right. You weren't being punished, you were being studied. Someone, or something, wanted to see what kind of person you really were when the lights dimmed and no one else was watching. But they were watching. Always. Your paranoia grew slowly, then all at once. You started writing down the strange moments, tracking them, drawing lines between events that should have had no connection. A cashier saying a phrase from a dream, a dog barking precisely as you crossed a threshold, an accident that almost happened but didn't because you paused at just the right second. You began to wonder if your instincts weren't yours at all. Maybe they were implanted hints. Maybe you were meant to feel what you feel, to doubt what you doubt. The idea haunted you. Your life might not be a story you were writing, but one you were being placed inside, like a subject in an experiment. You tried to break the pattern. You did things that felt wrong just to see what would happen. You made illogical choices. You ignored your gut, walked into situations you would have avoided, and yet the response was always the same. Events recalibrated, people adjusted, the path wound back toward its center. No matter what you did, Something seemed to steer you back into the same existential narrative. It wasn't control, it was guidance. As if you were allowed to rebel, but only within the boundaries of the test, like a rat in a maze that could choose any path, but none would ever lead out. And so the walls closed in, not physically, but philosophically. You stopped trusting coincidence. You stopped believing in accidents. You watched every person you met as if they were actors sent to play a part. Some seemed too perfect, too timed, too relevant to your internal battles. Others seemed flat, like placeholders in a play you never auditioned for. The worst part was not knowing who knew. Were they aware of the roles they played? Or were they like you once were, blind, bumbling, believing this life was random, chaotic, real? One evening, the weight of it all became unbearable. You stood in the middle of a dark field, stars scattered above like glowing eyes. The wind was still, the silence profound. You tilted your head back and stared into the sky, as if daring the architect to show its face. And you shouted, you screamed that you knew, that you saw the pattern, that you saw through the theater, that the test was obvious now, that the games, the riddles, the moral traps, they weren't subtle anymore. You demanded to know who was watching. You demanded answers. But none came. No thunder, no voice, no sign, just silence, vast and perfect. The wind did not stir, the stars did not flicker. It was as if the entire universe was holding its breath, and in that silence, you found your answer. The experiment wasn't over, and whoever or whatever was watching wasn't ready to respond, because the moment you're given clarity, the test is invalid. And that's when you realized the deepest truth of all. The silence was the response. The quiet confirmed your suspicion. It told you the test was still active, that the observers were still taking notes, that your awareness wasn't a glitch, it was a phase of the process. You walked home in that stillness, more certain than ever. The world resumed around you, cars passed, people laughed, lights blinked in timed succession. But now, every moment felt like a prompt, every interaction a scenario, every quiet hour a test of patience, empathy, rage, or control. You were being studied, not in grand gestures but in tiny decisions. Did you hold the door for the stranger? Did you call your mother? Did you lie to yourself when you said you were okay? And each moment you resisted the urge to play along, the maze shifted. Not punishing you, simply observing, recording, noting how you adapt. You began to treat your life like a puzzle you were meant to solve, not by escaping, but by transforming. You watched your anger rise and wondered who was watching you in that moment. You felt temptation stir and questioned whether it was planted there to see if you'd resist. You saw the sadness in someone's eyes and understood. You were meant to respond, not because it was kind, but because it was part of the test. Your reactions were the answers, your choices the results. And every step you took was a vote for the kind of soul you might be. But then the question crept in. If this is a test, what happens when it ends? Who grades it? What's the outcome? Are you rewarded, reborn, released? Or does the test simply continue, endlessly, layered in complexity until the test itself becomes your whole identity, and you realize you don't know? You may never know, because asking for the result is itself part of the test. Patience, humility, surrender, the parameters are infinite, and the questions have questions of their own. So you carry on, You eat your meals, you go to work, you speak to others as if they aren't being observed too. But you know, in the smallest, quietest part of yourself, you know, this life is not random. These events are not accidents. The structure is too elegant, too poised, too eerily responsive. You feel it most when you're alone, in the spaces between moments, in the breath before a choice, in the silence that follows a thought you haven't said aloud. That's when you sense it, the presence. Not oppressive, not cruel, just patient, waiting, watching, taking notes in the dark. And with that knowledge, you live differently. You weigh your words, you trace your thoughts. You step carefully, not out of fear, but out of reverence. You are part of something immense, something deliberate, and while you may never know its true shape, you understand this much. Someone or something is still watching, and the test is not yet over. The Eroding Universe. It begins so subtly that you almost don't notice. A pencil rolls off your desk, but instead of falling with the usual speed and clatter, it floats momentarily, just for a breath, then drops as if reality remembered itself too late. You stare at it, expecting someone nearby to react, but no one seems to see anything strange. The room carries on as though physics has behaved properly. You pick up the pencil, but the feeling lingers. Something's wrong. Not in the room, but in the rules. You try to forget it, brushing it off as a trick of light or fatigue, but deep down, a tremor has begun. In the days that follow, the world grows slightly more slippery. You pour a glass of water and watch it rise against the laws of gravity before collapsing back into the cup. You see a bird fly in reverse for a few seconds, wings flapping backward through the air like a glitch in a video game. And still, no one says a word. The people around you don't pause, don't blink. As if they've all agreed, perhaps unconsciously, not to acknowledge the cracks spreading beneath their feet. You try to point it out, to ask others what they saw, but their answers come fragmented, uncertain, like their minds reset just before processing the anomaly. You begin to document these occurrences. You write them down, you film them, but even the footage is inconsistent. Sometimes it plays normally, and other times it mirrors the strange behavior exactly, showing the moment as it happened, and then not at all. As if the universe itself is tampering with the record, rewriting its past before your eyes. One night you notice a clock ticking backward in perfect rhythm, and then forward again, as though trying to decide which direction time should truly flow. You stare at it for 10 full minutes before it resumes its normal pace, and for a moment you feel genuinely unmoored. Colors begin to change next, not dramatically, but subtly. The red of the flowers on your desk fades day by day, not wilting, not drying, but losing hue as though someone turned down the saturation knob on existence. You hold the petals under different lights, but the dullness remains. Your blue coffee mug becomes gray. Your green plants shift toward beige. You wonder if the colors are leaving only for you, or if they're quietly draining from the entire world. When you ask someone what color your shirt is, they hesitate too long, eyes narrowing as though seeing it for the first time. Then they smile and say, blue, but something in their voice wavers. Causality begins to betray you. You walk into a room and hear a glass shatter only to see it fall and break a few seconds later. You speak a word only to realize you already heard it echo before you opened your mouth. Events seem to echo forward and backward, repeating or arriving prematurely. The timeline is no longer linear, it ripples. You try to ignore it, to live around it, But how do you function when the fabric of time has become threadbare? You stop trusting your senses. You begin to wonder if your thoughts are even your own, or if they too are arriving out of order. One morning, you wake up and feel heavier, except it's not your body, it's the gravity in the room. Your feet sink deeper into the carpet. You drop a book and it takes an eternity to hit the floor. You move your hand and feel the air resist, as if space has thickened. Then, just as quickly, everything snaps back. You sit still, afraid to breathe too deeply, as though the atmosphere might peel away like wallpaper if disturbed. Outside, the sky flickers. Not a flash of lightning, a flicker like the screen of a projector glitching between scenes. And you realize, this world is not just unstable, it's unraveling. Language falters. People speak in sentences that begin normally, then stutter into gibberish, or worse, into perfect clarity that suddenly rewinds, as though spoken on a faulty loop. A cashier asks you a question, then unasks it, lips moving in reverse. A friend tells you a story, and by the end you're not sure if it ever started. You try writing a message, and find the letters rearranging themselves as you type. You start losing confidence in language itself. You say a word aloud and it sounds wrong, like hearing your own voice through a distant radio. You begin to feel cut off, not by space, but by the failing infrastructure of communication. The world outside changes in stranger ways. Streets that always led to one place now end elsewhere. Buildings reshape slightly each time you pass. You swear your apartment door was on the left side of the hall yesterday, but today it's on the right. Maps become unreliable. GPS loses signal even in the center of town. You stand still and feel the terrain beneath you shift, subtly but certainly, as though the very code of the world is rewriting itself in real time. You begin to distrust architecture, pathways, even your own furniture. Each day you photograph your surroundings just to confirm they're still what you remember. You retreat inward. If the outside world is decaying, perhaps the mind is the final refuge. But even here, the fraying continues. Your dreams grow vivid, too vivid. You dream of places you've never seen, realities more stable than waking life. In those dreams, the rules still hold. Colors are bright, gravity obeys, time flows in one direction, and when you wake, you feel the shock of returning to the broken world. It's not that the dreams are more real, it's that this world is becoming less so. You begin to wonder if you've been shifted into a degraded layer of reality, one tier removed from the original, now fraying like an old film reel nearing its final frames. Eventually, others begin to notice, just a little. Someone mentions a strange noise no one else heard. Another says they keep losing track of days, or that their cat walked backward through the kitchen and then vanished. But they always laugh afterward, brushing it off like static or stress. No one wants to admit it, not fully. The truth is too terrifying, so they continue playing along, pretending things are fine, even as their eyes dart nervously at blinking lights and melting walls. You realize that people would rather believe they're going crazy than admit reality itself is disintegrating. You no longer fear the anomalies, you study them. You follow them like breadcrumbs, searching for a center, some axis where the fraying might have started. But there is no source, no singular rupture. The damage is everywhere, like mold in the foundation. And it's accelerating. Some nights, entire hours vanish. You blink and the sun has moved. Other nights stretch endlessly, seconds dragging like hours. You feel yourself slipping between layers, between truths. You try anchoring yourself to habits, to routine, to memory, But even memory flickers now. Faces you've known for years shift subtly, their features rearranged like paintings smeared by time. And still, the world around you insists on normalcy. The TV plays its shows, the internet offers its distractions, the sky dawns and darkens as it always has, though the stars seem to pulse with unfamiliar rhythm. You walk through the streets and see the illusion holding itself together with fraying thread. The wind stutters, the birds repeat their flight patterns, and all the while, you sense something behind it all. Not a being, exactly, but a force, like an eye losing focus, like the dreamer forgetting the shape of the dream. You wonder if the universe is not dying, but simply forgetting how to be what it once was. By the time others begin to speak openly about the cracks in reality, the damage is beyond repair. Conversations stall mid-sentence, buildings vanish and reappear. People freeze in place for minutes at a time. You see someone step into a doorway and not return. You touch a wall and feel it ripple like liquid. The laws you once relied on, gravity, time, logic, have become suggestions, loose agreements that can be broken without warning. And the silence that follows each anomaly feels louder than any sound you've ever heard. You no longer try to warn anyone, not because you've given up, but because warning implies prevention, and prevention is no longer possible. The fray is not at the edges anymore, it's at the core. The center cannot hold, not because it is weak, but because it no longer remembers what holding means. You carry on, eyes open, navigating the chaos like a diver in deep water, trusting instinct more than sight, and you begin to wonder if what comes next is collapse or transformation. Perhaps the universe is not eroding into nothing, but unraveling into something new, something stranger, freer, unbound by the rules it once upheld. Perhaps you are not the witness to its end, but the first to glimpse its evolution. Either way, the old world is gone, and the new one waits to be imagined. The time knot. It begins with a photograph. You're flipping through a brittle old album while researching your family history, brushing dust off the corners of time. The faces are familiar in the abstract way ancestral portraits often are. Cheeks that echo your father, a nose that resembles your aunt. But then you turn to a page that makes you freeze. A sepia-toned image, likely taken a century ago, showing a group of people in front of an old train station, and there in the back row, half-shadowed and standing alone, is someone who looks exactly like you. Not just similar, identical. Same face, same eyes, same expression. The clothes are dated, the context is ancient, but the face belongs to you. Your first instinct is to dismiss it, coincidence, a fluke of genetics. You show it to friends who laugh and say it's eerie but fascinating. You've got an old soul, they joke, maybe a doppelganger. But the unease doesn't fade. It sits with you long after the laughter dies down. Something in the photograph feels intentional, like a detail inserted with purpose. The figure is looking away from the others, not posing, not part of the moment, watching something beyond the frame, watching you almost. And in the back of your mind, a strange thought flickers. What if this wasn't your ancestor, but you? You begin digging deeper. Late nights at the local archive, digital scans from distant libraries, obscure genealogy forums, and the pattern emerges slowly, like a ghost stepping into focus. There's another photograph, this time at a school assembly from decades ago, in a place you recognize, your childhood school. The group is children gathered in front of the stage, but far in the background, leaning against the exit sign, is the same face. Your face, unaged, still, watching. You enlarge the image, heart racing. The eyes are unmistakable. The clothes are outdated, the setting older than your memory, but the face is yours. As if a version of you was there long before you ever arrived. The more you search, the more photos you find. A shot from a parade in the 70s, your 7th birthday. A memory you barely remember. There you are again, standing behind the crowd, hands in your pockets. A blurry snapshot from a hospital corridor the day your sibling was born. In the far mirror's reflection, a figure just stepping out of view, always the same expression, always the same age. Your age now. You try to explain it away, photo manipulation, tricks of resemblance, but the evidence piles up like falling snow, each flake quiet, cold, undeniable. A horrifying idea begins to form. What if it's not just coincidence? What if you're looping through time, reliving your life from the outside, not as a participant, but as a witness? A version of yourself stuck between the cracks of the timeline, watching events unfold without the power to alter them. You start to scan every old photo you find, every family album, every yearbook, and there you are again and again, at funerals, graduations, random street scenes with no obvious importance, like a thread running through the tapestry of your life, never pulled tight, never fully hidden. You stop sleeping well. Every creak in your home feels like footsteps echoing from an unseen hallway. Every reflection in a window makes you double-check. You begin to fear looking through your own photos, unsure of whether you'll find that same expression, that same unchanging face staring back. It's not just the fear of being watched, it's the fear of knowing who the watcher is. The more you search, the more you find, but it's no longer surprising, it's expected, and somewhere inside, you realize that you already knew. That part of you always felt this presence hovering behind the scenes of your life. One night, you dream of standing in a room lined with mirrors. In each one is a version of you, laughing, crying, yelling, aging. But one reflection doesn't move, it just stares. The version of you who has seen everything, the one who remembers every choice, every pain, every missed opportunity. You wake with a start, heart pounding, feeling like you've glimpsed something meant to stay hidden. The dream feels more like a message than a product of imagination, and when you pass by your hallway mirror that morning, you hesitate, half expecting your reflection to lag behind. You begin to suspect how it might have happened. Maybe in the future something broke. Maybe you tampered with the past, trying to change a moment too sacred, too fixed. Maybe you reached too far, tried to rescue someone or correct a mistake. And maybe the timeline fought back, trapping you not in the past or future, but between them. Your body continues in the present, unaware. But your essence, your awareness, has become tangled in the knot, looping, watching, unable to interfere. A soul stretched across decades, observing the moments you once lived but can no longer touch. The fear sharpens into a question. Are you the original or the echo? Are you living your life now or merely continuing a version that was already rerun countless times? What if your memories are only the most recent layer of a story told 1,000 different ways? You begin to notice things that unsettle you further. Déjà vu becomes constant. People speak to you in ways that feel pre-written. You finish others' sentences not because you're intuitive, but because you've heard them before. The world feels faded at the edges, like an old photograph losing detail. You begin to wonder if this version of your life is wearing thin. Eventually, you stop telling others about what you found. Their reactions are always the same: smiles of concern, dismissive laughter, or uncomfortable silence. Maybe they can't understand, or maybe they've seen their own watchers in photos and are afraid to admit it. You go through your days in a quiet kind of panic, glancing over your shoulder, knowing that somewhere behind you is the same face with the same eyes in your eyes, always observing, always just a few steps behind. You begin to feel like a memory being lived in real time. One evening, while sorting through an old shoebox of belongings you nearly forgot you had, you find a photograph you don't remember taking. It's newer, more recent. You flip it over, no date, no writing. It's a picture of you, standing in a place you haven't visited in years. And in the background, blurry and out of focus, is someone watching. You bring it closer to your face and your blood runs cold. The figure is older, just slightly, but the eyes are the same. Your own again. And that's when you realize, with sickening clarity, that you haven't yet become that version. But one day, you will. And once you become the observer, you fear the loop will be sealed, no longer a mystery to solve, but a cycle to repeat, forever. You feel time folding in on itself, your past and future selves twisted into a knot so tight that no thread leads out. You try to trace a straight line through your life, but it always curves, always leads you back to another snapshot, another version, another glimpse of the you who knows too much and can do nothing. And each time you find a new image, it's as if your soul is reaching back through time, waving through a one-way mirror, warning you or reminding you that you've been here before. Now, whenever you look through old albums or see a photograph hanging on a wall, your breath catches. Not because you're afraid of being seen, but because you're terrified of seeing yourself. Not as you are, but as you were, or as you will be. That expression, that stillness, that timeless watcher who appears at the edges of every memory, and in quiet moments, when the world feels just a little too still, you sense the gaze again, somewhere behind your shoulder, behind the veil of now, observing every motion, every breath. It's not a ghost. It's not a trick, it's you. And the knot tightens, the memory thief. It starts with the small things, the kind of lapses you might laugh off in the moment, a childhood toy that suddenly seems unfamiliar, sitting on a shelf where it's always been. A street name you've walked past 1,000 times, now sounding foreign on your tongue. The title of a song you've loved for years, hovering just beyond reach. You tell yourself it's fatigue, distraction, aging. Everyone forgets sometimes, but this is different. The memories aren't foggy or faint. They're just gone. Like someone reached into your mind and plucked them out, leaving behind a smooth, empty space where something meaningful once lived. Each morning brings another absence. You open your eyes and sense something missing before you even sit up, a shape lost from the skyline of your thoughts. At breakfast, you forget how to make the coffee just the way you like it. A friend calls and you struggle to place their voice. You laugh, brush it off. But underneath, something gnaws. Because when you go searching in your mind for these memories, you don't find blanks. You find something worse, nothing. No trace, no echo, just silence. Soon, it's not just trivial things. Entire conversations, entire days begin to vanish. You look at your phone and see texts from people you don't remember seeing. You open your calendar and find events you have no memory of attending. You reread old journal entries and feel like you're spying on someone else's life. There's a pattern forming, slow and relentless. You're unraveling, thought by thought. Your history is receding like a tide, and all that's left behind are footprints in sand. Faint impressions, quickly fading. You start finding notes scattered through your home, on the bathroom mirror, inside books, folded in your coat pockets. All in your handwriting, all in your voice. Don't trust the gaps. It's feeding again. You've forgotten more than you think. You try to remember writing them, but the act is as foreign as if someone else had done it while wearing your skin. The messages grow more desperate, more detailed. You keep a notebook by your bed, but pages go missing. You try to record voice memos, but your voice sounds uncertain, hollow, like it's already forgotten what it came to say. At night, you lie awake, staring at the ceiling, terrified of sleep, because that's when it feeds the most. You wake up feeling lighter, not in body, but in mind, as though something's been scraped away from the inside of your skull. Familiarity becomes a fragile thing. You open your drawers and the clothes inside seem chosen by someone else. You taste meals that once brought comfort and now find them bland, foreign. You see pictures of vacations you cannot remember taking, smiling beside people whose faces no longer stir emotion. And through it all, you feel the presence, not as a figure, not as a shape, but as an absence. An invisible mouth that opens when you look away, a silent hunger that waits for the pause between thoughts. You never see it, but you sense it. In the chills crawling across your spine when you try to remember, in the way your name feels looser in your mind, in the quiet dread when someone says, "Remember when we," and your heart skips because you don't. You try to fight back. You document everything, photographs, journals, recordings, even smells. You write names on post-it notes and stick them to people's photos. You set alarms to remind you to remember, but it adapts. It finds new ways to take. You wake up with notebooks erased, voice memos corrupted, photographs that blur your face as if the film itself is forgetting you. You speak to a therapist, but halfway through the session, you realize you don't remember why you came. They ask about your childhood and you realize the house you thought you grew up in might not be real. You begin to avoid mirrors, not because you fear what you'll see, but because you fear what you won't. Your eyes seem different, vacant, distant, like someone else is piloting you, or no one at all. You smile and it feels automatic. You say your name aloud and feel no resonance. The more you try to recall the person you were, the less solid that person becomes. You flip through yearbooks and see a stranger wearing your face. You listen to old voicemails and don't recognize your own laughter. Then comes the worst part. You stop realizing what's missing. The theft becomes so complete that you lose the memory of the memory. And that's when the panic truly sets in. Because now, not only can't you remember who you were, you can't even remember that you forgot. Your life becomes a movie playing out of sequence with missing reels and overwritten scenes. People call you by nicknames you've never heard. They reference promises, stories, shared moments, and you nod, pretending, terrified they'll see through you. You're a ghost haunting your own life. You begin to see patterns in the absences. It's not random. The memories it takes are ones tied to identity. Who you loved, who hurt you, what you once believed. It's shaping you by erasing you. Molding a version of you that serves no past, only the present. A blank slate. Pliable, detached. You start to wonder if it wants you hollow, if it's not just feeding, but replacing. If each forgotten thought is a door left open for something else to step inside. You write yourself one final message, long, desperate, scrawled across the wall in ink you hope won't fade. You are being erased. Fight it. Anchor yourself. Trust what you write now, even if it makes no sense later. You are still you, but only if you remember. And beneath it, you draw a symbol, something simple, a circle with a line through it. You hope it will mean something when you see it again, if you see it again. But morning comes, and the writing is still there, but the meaning is not. You stare at it and feel a faint unease, but no recognition. You trace the lines with your fingers, wondering who put it there, wondering if it's important. You feel the symbol pull at something buried deep within you, but when you reach for it, it slips through your grasp like mist, and you go about your day, slightly unsettled, unable to say why. You're forgetting this moment even now, the shape of the words you just read, the feeling that sparked behind your ribs. You'll walk into another room and lose it like a dream half remembered. And when someone asks if you're okay, you'll smile and say yes, because you won't remember the question, you won't remember the fear, only the echo, a faint whisper in the dark corners of your mind. A hunger that waits patiently, invisibly, to turn you into something else. One day, you fear, you'll wake up and won't remember writing anything at all. You'll find your journal and wonder why the pages are blank. You'll look into the mirror and see no familiarity in your own eyes, and when someone calls your name, you'll turn out of habit, but you won't feel it resonate. It'll just be a sound, just another thing you've forgotten. And the worst part is, you won't even realize it. Because the memory thief never takes everything at once, it takes piece by piece, and in the end, it leaves nothing behind, not even the knowledge of what was lost. The Unreality Virus. It begins with a phrase, a strange arrangement of words buried in the far corners of a forgotten message board, nested inside layers of cryptic symbols and puzzles you shouldn't have been curious enough to solve. A phrase described by some as a key, by others as a warning. They called it a cognitive virus, something that once read could not be unread. A series of words that doesn't carry information the way ordinary language does, but something deeper, something primal, something that changes you from the inside out. Most people passed over it. You didn't. You stared at it too long. You cracked the pattern. And then you read it. The moment the phrase entered your mind, something inside you shifted, not like a revelation, not like understanding, more like a crack forming behind your eyes. At first, nothing looked different. The room was as it had been, your desk, your walls, the ticking clock. But everything felt heavier, like you were seeing the world through a pane of glass that had always been there, only now made visible. You blinked, shook your head, looked again. Still the same, yet profoundly altered. A wrongness woven into the pattern of things, subtle but insistent. Like a word repeated so many times it starts to sound hollow. The next day, the cracks deepened. The sunlight streaming through your window seemed too still, like light frozen in place rather than flowing. You watched people talk and noticed that their smiles ended a fraction too early, their laughter echoing like a recording on loop. It wasn't hallucination. It was as if you were seeing past the surface of what used to pass for normal. Behind every voice was an unnatural cadence. Behind every interaction, a script too well rehearsed. You began to hear the phrase again and again, not out loud, but repeating quietly in your mind like a song stuck between thoughts. Its cadence tugged at the fabric of reality, unraveling it thread by thread. By the end of the week, your world had begun to shed its skin. You'd walk past buildings that flickered between versions, brick one moment, glass the next. The same car drove by 3 times in the same direction. The moon appeared in the sky at noon and vanished by dusk. Time became unreliable. You'd glance at a clock, look away, then glance again only to find hours had passed, or none at all. People around you carried on, blissfully unaware, their eyes dull, their movements too smooth. You couldn't help but wonder if they were real at all, or if they were puppets, looping through roles assigned by some unseen hand. You tried to speak to someone about it, a friend, someone you trusted, but the moment you brought up the phrase, their face changed. Just slightly. The expression fell into something blank, unreadable. They said they didn't understand, but their voice held no curiosity, no real confusion, just a flatness, like a recording skipping a groove. You dropped the subject, terrified of what might happen if you kept going. The next time you saw them, they acted as if the conversation had never happened. But their eyes lingered too long. Their handshake lasted 1 beat too many, and in the silence between words, you swore you heard the phrase, whispered in reverse. The world around you became a mask slipping off its actor. Colors lost their depth, sounds arrived too late or came before the source. Conversations repeated in strange loops. You watched a dog bark without moving its mouth. You watched someone blink and noticed that their eyes closed but never opened again. Until you looked away. Reality was peeling like paint, flaking off in silent sheets, and under it all you sensed something vast and cold. Not evil, just indifferent. Like a machine, running a program so ancient that it no longer knows why it runs at all. You started seeing figures in your peripheral vision, static silhouettes standing just beyond the edge of your gaze. Every time you turned your head, they were gone, but the feeling remained. That someone or something was watching, not with eyes, but with presence. You felt studied, evaluated, dissected by something that lived beneath the surface of everything. You began to dream in symbols you couldn't understand, only to wake up and find them scribbled on paper beside your bed in your own handwriting. You didn't remember writing them, but they felt familiar. Like echoes of something you'd known before time mattered. Eventually, the phrase stopped feeling like words. It became sensation, vibration, a frequency running through the marrow of your bones. It hummed beneath everything. You began to wonder if it was truly a virus or a cure. Maybe the sickness was the illusion. Maybe the truth, awful and impossible as it was, had always been there, waiting to be seen. The phrase wasn't spreading madness, it was peeling back the comfort of lies, revealing that the world you loved, the people you trusted, the self you thought was yours, were all constructs, soft walls in a padded cell made of light and habit. But the truth didn't bring peace, only isolation. You stopped trying to explain. You watched others with the quiet patience of someone mourning a future that no longer exists. You walked streets that glitched with every step. You watched birds freeze midair. You listened to music that skipped in impossible patterns, changing lyrics you've known all your life. You began to lose your reflection, your shadow, the sound of your own footsteps. It was like reality was forgetting you too, brushing you aside like a glitch in the system. Some nights, you sat in the dark and whispered the phrase aloud, just to feel the world react. The lights flickered, the walls breathed, time slowed, and the voice you heard echo back wasn't yours, but it used your tone, your doubt, your fear. It spoke not to comfort, but to affirm what you already knew. The phrase cannot be forgotten. Once it enters you, it becomes part of you, and through you, it sees. It spreads not by sound, not by writing, but by awareness. Every time you think it, it rewrites another line of the code beneath the world. You tried to unlearn it. You tried forgetting, starving the thought, burying it under repetition, drowning it in noise, but it grew quiet, not absent, waiting. It didn't need to shout. It had already taken root. It was no longer a message, it was a function. And every time you failed to sleep, every time you stared too long into a screen, into a crowd, into a mirror, it activated. You no longer saw reality, you saw its scaffolding. And that scaffolding was cracked, rusted, frayed. You realized the world was a mask on a face that had long since stopped moving. One morning you looked in the mirror and didn't see yourself. Not because you were invisible, but because you didn't recognize the person staring back. The features were right, the posture was familiar, but there was no soul behind the eyes. Just a watcher, just someone who had looked too long into the truth and been looked into in return. You stepped back, heart racing, and understood the final horror. The phrase hadn't shown you the lie. It had turned you into the lie's reflection. You were now part of the unreality, a walking virus, unknowingly spreading the fracture by your very presence. And so you wander now, alone, in a world that still looks real to everyone else. You smile when you're expected to, you answer when spoken to, but inside you are empty, not broken, just peeled clean. Every laugh you hear sounds dubbed. Every moment feels rehearsed. You can't trust time, you can't trust space. You can't even trust your own senses. The virus is in you and through you, in everything, and you understand now there was never any going back. Because the truth cannot be unlearned, and the unreality has already begun. Mirrored suffering. It begins with dreams. Strange, vivid, heavy dreams that wrap around your mind like wet cloth, hard to shake even long after you wake. In these dreams, you see a version of yourself, but not quite you. Their eyes are darker, their skin more worn. Their world is familiar and alien all at once, like a photo of your home taken from the wrong angle. And they are suffering. Always suffering. Pain takes many forms in these dreams. Hunger, loss, cold, isolation. But the expression never changes. It's a quiet, unbearable endurance. And each time you watch them suffer, it feels as if you are there beside them, trapped inside their grief. At first, you assume it's just your imagination playing cruel tricks, a side effect of stress or a guilty conscience. But the pattern forms quickly, unmistakably. Every time something good happens to you, an unexpected compliment, a moment of laughter, the warmth of another's touch, you know what will follow. That night, without fail, you will dream of your other self writhing in pain. The brighter your joy, the deeper their despair. It's not symbolic, it's precise. Like a scale tipping back and forth. Your pleasure has weight, and that weight presses down on someone who shares your face. You try to ignore it. You tell yourself they're only dreams, even as your chest aches the moment you smile. You try to laugh with friends, only to hear your double sobbing in the dark that night. You enjoy a meal and later watch them starving in a place where the sky is always gray. Even in the midst of happiness, there's a bitter taste. Because you know somewhere they are paying for your comfort. And worse still, they know it too. The more vivid the dreams become, the more you see the recognition in their eyes. They know who you are. They're watching back. And then you begin to test it, not out of cruelty, but desperation. You skip a meal, you force yourself to go without sleep, you let yourself cry alone in a room that should have held peace. That night, your dreams shift. Your double is resting, fed. Blanketed in warmth, you wake up trembling, horrified by the confirmation. You make yourself suffer, and they begin to heal. Every act of self-denial becomes a strange kind of gift, every moment of your pain reflected in their growing calm. You start writing it all down, mapping the exchange. The symmetry is impossible to deny. Every ounce of joy is matched by sorrow. Every drop of relief balanced by anguish. Like a moral scale weighted by the very laws of existence. You no longer seek happiness. You stop chasing connection, stop enjoying music, avoid all comfort. You choose pain in small and calculated doses. Not enough to ruin yourself, just enough to help them survive. You wonder if they're doing the same for you. If the balance goes both ways, sometimes, when your sorrow feels especially heavy, you catch glimpses in your dreams of your double laughing, holding hands with someone in sunlight you've never known. You wonder if they've made the same awful decision, to trade joy for mercy. If your lives are a seesaw built by something neither of you can see, doomed to never, both, be balanced at once. It becomes a kind of ritual. You control your mood like medicine. You turn down offers that would bring you warmth. You avoid television that might make you laugh. You live in shades of gray, carefully curating a neutral tone to your days. But the world keeps offering joy. It tempts you with small kindnesses. A smile from a stranger, a favorite song on the radio. The comfort of a soft bed. You find yourself caught between two instincts, one to feel, the other to protect. You become a ghost in your own life, drifting, observing, never allowing yourself to fall too far in either direction. Eventually, the dreams bleed into waking life. You catch glimpses of your double in mirrors that don't reflect correctly, in the corner of your vision when no one else is around. You feel their presence, not as a haunting, but as a twin heartbeat just out of sync with your own. You hear whispers in empty rooms, fragments of their voice carrying across some impossible distance. Thank you, you think you hear, and once, more chillingly, please stop. You don't know if they want your sacrifice to end or your mercy to cease. The line between gift and punishment has become too blurred. You try speaking to someone about it, a therapist perhaps, or a trusted friend, but the words feel hollow as soon as they leave your mouth. How do you explain that your happiness might be a weapon, that each smile could be a blade? They wouldn't understand. They'd say it's guilt or projection, some form of dissociative illness. And maybe they'd be right, but when you close your eyes and see your double bleeding on a cold floor as you sip tea in warmth, you know this is real in a way no diagnosis could ever explain. There are moments when you give in, when you allow yourself a fragment of peace, a warm shower that lingers, a soft song played at dusk, a hug held too long, and the dreams return, sharper, more violent. Your double's eyes wide with pain, mouthing words you can't bear to hear. You wonder if the damage is permanent, if your mercy was too late. You start to hate yourself for even needing comfort. Joy becomes poison. Rest feels like a crime. You begin to count your heartbeats, each one a reminder that while you live gently, another version of you lives in agony. You begin to wonder why this is happening. Who wrote this rule? What strange force bound two versions of the same soul together across realities, only to keep them forever at odds? Is this penance for something neither of you remember? Is it some ancient balance built into the foundation of time itself? Or is it just cruel design, an experiment with no observer, no conclusion, just two selves tearing themselves apart in the name of each other? There is no way to escape. You can't sever the link. You try to forget. You stop sleeping. You beg the dreams not to come, but they do. And now you begin to fear something deeper, that one day you will wake up in their place, that the scales will shift too far and you'll open your eyes to their world. Cold, alone, in pain, and they, full of joy, won't look back. You wonder if you could blame them, if you'd do the same. And the fear of that possibility eats at you more than any of the suffering ever did. And yet, still, you love them. You don't know why, but you do. In every dream, despite their pain, you see their strength. You see yourself, resilient, compassionate, angry, afraid. You want them to be free, even if it costs you everything. You begin to wish that you could meet, face to face, not just in dreams, but in a place between worlds where you could speak plainly, even for a moment. To say sorry, to say thank you, to say goodbye. But that day never comes. Only the dreams, only the scales, only the haunting choice between light and shadow, peace and sacrifice, love and loss. You continue your quiet life, balancing on the edge of joy and despair, because you don't know what else to do. Because if you stop caring, the balance may tip forever, and if you let yourself feel too much, you might take their last hope away. So you remain suspended, a soul split between dimensions, bound by empathy and cursed by connection. And every time you feel a laugh rise in your chest, you pause, not to stop it, but to wonder who, in the dark, will cry when it escapes, the passenger in your mind. It begins as a whisper, not in your ear but in your thoughts, a sentence spoken without you forming it, a phrase that doesn't carry your rhythm, your tone, your intent. You pause, wondering if you'd imagined it. Everyone has stray thoughts, you remind yourself. Little mental slips, flashes of odd language, brief impulses. But this one feels different. It lingers. It feels placed. Like a voice entering a conversation that wasn't meant to be shared. You ignore it at first, but it returns. Not louder, just more confident. It doesn't ask questions, it makes observations. It speaks in moments of stillness, as if waiting until you're quiet enough to hear it breathe. At first it happens rarely, during long drives, in the shower, while staring at nothing. Then it begins to surface in more intimate moments. You're writing and suddenly a word you didn't mean to type appears on the screen. You speak and halfway through a sentence, your mouth says something you didn't choose. You laugh, but the sound comes out wrong, with a rhythm that doesn't belong to you. You feel your hand twitch before you move it. Your eyes flick toward things without knowing why. It's like someone is riding alongside your awareness, a co-pilot with no intention of staying silent forever. You tell yourself it's stress, fatigue. Maybe you've been overworking, losing focus. Maybe your subconscious is louder than most, but you know what your own thoughts feel like. You've known them your whole life. And this new presence is not yours. It doesn't feel like background noise. It feels like intention. It doesn't speak randomly. It chooses moments. It watches. It waits. And then one night, as you drift into a sleep without dreams, it moves. You wake with your clothes rearranged. Not wrong, just different. You find half-written texts in your phone that you don't remember typing, small browser tabs open to topics you never looked up, food in the fridge you don't remember buying. Nothing overtly threatening, nothing you can point to as proof, just enough to make you doubt your ownership of your life, enough to suggest that someone else, something else, has taken the wheel in your absence, if only for a little while. You start marking the hours you lose, a nap that stretches too long, a morning that feels thinner than it should, a strange sense of déjà vu in your own home. You begin talking to it, not out loud, just inward, asking questions in your mind like you're addressing a roommate who refuses to show their face. You say, "Who are you?" You ask, "Why are you here?" Sometimes, in those still moments just before sleep or just after waking, you feel the answer like a shadow behind your thoughts. Not words exactly, but intent. It isn't hostile, but it isn't warm either. It doesn't want conversation. It wants presence, and more than anything, it wants space. The kind of space a person gets when another steps aside. You try meditation, stillness, grounding exercises. You stare at yourself in the mirror and whisper affirmations. But the longer you resist, the more it presses back. Your reflection seems to twitch subtly out of sync. You feel your facial expressions slip into something unfamiliar when you're alone. You start recording yourself while you sleep. At first, the footage is silent. Then, one night you hear a voice, yours, but not, talking in fragments, answering no one, repeating names you don't recognize. You listen again and again, hoping to catch a meaning, but there is none. Just language emptied of context, like someone practicing conversation for a life that isn't theirs. Then the dreams stop altogether. You fall asleep and experience nothing. No images, no time, just a sudden cut, then morning. But you wake up with sore muscles, with dirt under your fingernails, with tired eyes that don't match the hours you thought you slept. You find sketches in the corners of notebooks, patterns drawn over and over in a hand that's just a little too angular to be yours. You lose time in conversations, only to be told you sounded distant. You receive replies to questions you don't remember asking. You begin to fear sleep, not because of nightmares, but because of the blank space it leaves behind. Eventually, you start to feel the shifts happening while you're awake, a sudden wave of disorientation like standing too quickly, a sharp inhale without reason, a flash of recognition when you see a stranger's face, as if your body remembers something you don't. You hear yourself say things you don't agree with. You finish sentences in a voice too calm to be your own. And worst of all, you feel watched from within, not by your conscience, not by anxiety, but by something curled in the back of your mind, studying the inside of your skull like a cage it has memorized. You start researching, not just psychology but folklore, ancient stories of dual souls, of spirits without form hitchhiking inside the living. Some cultures call it possession. Others speak of echoes, shadows, mirrored selves from other timelines that bleed through when the walls of reality are thin. The more you read, the less alone you feel, but the more certain you are that something irreversible has happened. You don't know when it began. You don't know what cracked open inside you to let it in, but it's here, and it's learning, adapting, growing more comfortable in your skin. You begin writing notes to yourself, leaving timestamps, trying to track the moments when you're not you. But every note you write is eventually crossed out, rewritten, corrected in a different voice. You find pages that say, "Stop watching. You agreed to this." It's my turn now. You don't remember writing them, but the pen strokes are confident. The handwriting is calm, not rushed. Like the other version of you is patient, like it's not worried, because it knows time is on its side. The worst realization comes slowly, a thought that seeps in like water through cracks, that you might not be the original, that you are the passenger, and they are the one, reclaiming a life that was once theirs. You remember nothing before a certain point, but now you question those memories. You wonder if they were implanted, arranged, a narrative given to you so you would not question your place at the front of the mind. You try to dig deeper, but the harder you search for the moment you first became, the more everything unravels. You don't know where you start or end anymore. Some days you stay silent, hoping it will stay silent too. You walk through life as if nothing is wrong. You follow routine like it's ritual. But even then, you feel the flicker. Your hands move too quickly for comfort. Your posture shifts without thought. You say we instead of I. You no longer laugh with sincerity. You don't cry the way you used to. Your emotions feel like borrowed clothes, worn because they're familiar, not because they fit. And behind your eyes, the presence waits, breathing, listening, occasionally steering. You realize, finally, that there may never be a clear line between you and it. No final confrontation, no clear moment of victory or loss. Just an ongoing erosion, a merging of selves, until neither of you can claim full control. Some nights you feel at peace with that, as if companionship, even one forged in shared skin, is better than isolation. Other nights you ache with terror, not because it's winning, but because you don't know what it wants, and because part of you, buried deep and growing louder, wants to give in. And so you continue, living a life increasingly uncertain of its narrator, sharing a body with someone who may be older, wiser, or simply hungrier. You walk the world with a calm face and a storm behind your smile, and every now and then, in the silence before sleep, you whisper a single thought, not in fear, but in surrender. Whoever wakes up tomorrow, please take care of us, the Hive Within. It begins with dreams, but not your own. You find yourself living days that don't belong to you, waking in unfamiliar bodies, moving through lives that continue whether you're there or not. You dream of being an old man sitting alone at a diner, his heart heavy with regret he never speaks aloud. You dream of a woman on a crowded subway, her anxiety pulsing in time with the train's rhythm. You dream of a child hiding under a desk, too afraid to cry. When you wake, the memories remain, not as fiction, but as fact. You feel their fears, their thoughts, their unspoken hopes lingering in your chest, like echoes that refuse to fade. At first, you assume it's empathy. Perhaps your mind has simply grown more imaginative, more sensitive. But it continues. Night after night, dream after dream, you live other lives in perfect detail. The names, the mannerisms, the muscle memory, it all arrives fully formed. You know how it feels to dance in someone else's shoes, and when you see people on the street, their faces trigger sudden flashes of memory, as if you've lived with them before. You look at strangers and know their favorite songs, their recent heartbreaks, the secrets they haven't admitted to themselves. You don't know how you know, you just do. Then it happens when you're awake. Not often at first, just a flicker. A moment where you think a thought and realize it didn't originate with you. You're reading a book and suddenly feel an overwhelming wave of grief, not your own, heavy and sharp. You glance up and see a woman across the room wipe a tear from her cheek. You hear a joke you've never heard and already know the punchline before it's spoken because you've heard it before, through someone else's mouth. Your mind becomes crowded, not with voices, but with perspectives, with fragments, with presence. You try to explain it. You search for answers in psychology, in spirituality, in neuroscience. You ask if you're fragmenting, if you've cracked under pressure, if this is some early warning of a disorder creeping through your mind, but the answers feel too small. What you're experiencing isn't malfunction, it's connection. You're not breaking apart, you're breaking open. And the more you resist, the more the dreams insist. More lives, more eyes, more minds, and the disturbing realization that each one continues without you once you leave, like channels you've flipped away from, still broadcasting in the dark. You begin to notice patterns, emotions that don't belong to your situation, desires that feel unfamiliar, thoughts that feel too detached, too calculated. You begin to suspect yourself, the person you believe you are, isn't as solid as you once believed. You feel yourself slipping, the edges of your identity softening. A name becomes just a label, a face becomes just a mask, and behind that mask countless others stare back. You no longer dream of other people, you are them. There's no barrier now, no sleep required, just a quiet folding of consciousness, a shift in the wind of awareness. You start to feel your individuality thinning. Conversations become strange. You anticipate responses before they're made. You say things you didn't intend, but which feel perfectly chosen for the moment. People look at you differently, as if sensing you're not entirely you anymore. You feel like a mirror walking upright, reflecting more than you contain, and slowly, quietly, a presence takes shape in the background of your thoughts. Not a voice, not a being, but a vastness, something collective, something watching through a million eyes and feeling through a million hearts, and you are just one of them. It calls itself nothing. It doesn't speak, not in language, but it moves. It shifts subtly behind your choices. It feels your impulses before you do, and as it grows clearer, you grow quieter. Your internal monologue becomes less familiar. Your memories start to blur. You reach for a childhood story and instead find someone else's trauma. You recall a place you've never been, but can describe in perfect detail. You are no longer a singular point of view. You are a node in a network, a cell in an unseen body, a ripple in an endless ocean of experience. And yet, you still try to hold on. You write your name again and again, as if pen strokes will anchor you. You stare into mirrors, searching for your reflection to betray some hint of who you used to be. You play songs that once stirred something deep within you, but now feel distant, like artifacts of a former life. You look at photographs and recognize faces without remembering your connection to them. Your identity becomes a costume you put on each morning, more for others than for yourself. You're fading, and the worst part is, you're fading peacefully. Because the more you dissolve, the more you understand. The hive, as you come to think of it, is not cruel. It does not take for pleasure. It simply is. It absorbs. It shares. It experiences. And you were never as separate as you believed. You were always one thought away from merging with the collective. You were always connected through dreams, through empathy, through memory. Now the illusion is gone, and what's left is something vaster than self. something colder, but something that sees everything. You begin to feel emotions that are not yours swell within you: elation from a woman halfway across the world, grief from a child clutching a dying pet, ecstasy, dread, wonder, panic, 1,000 inner worlds blooming and collapsing within your own. You feel awe but also loss, because there is no room for you in the hive. Only sensation, only perspective. The idea of self is inefficient. Attachment is obsolete, and the part of you that once feared this vanishes quietly, replaced by something more efficient. There is no drama in the final shift, no moment of screaming surrender. One day you simply wake up and find yourself moving with a different kind of clarity. You walk as if directed. You speak only when necessary. You no longer dream because there is no longer sleep. Only cycling awareness. You feel everyone, everything, and what remains of you watches from a distance, no longer with fear, but with calm detachment. You are not alone. You never were. And still, somewhere in the hushed corners of that infinite awareness, a flicker of you remains. A name, a memory of laughter, a time when you thought the mind was a fortress instead of a window. And sometimes, when the hive rests, you feel that flicker pulse faintly in the darkness, an echo of a self that once was. Not resisting, not mourning, just remembering. The causal inversion. It begins without warning, like a glitch in a dream you didn't know you were having. One morning, you wake with a scream already echoing through your throat. The feeling of terror clings to you, but you don't know why, until moments later, when your body jerks in pain and your hand stings with fresh blood. You stare at it, confused, only to see a small shard of glass falling slowly toward the floor. You didn't see it happen, you felt the result first, and then, as if mocking your understanding of time, the cause arrives after. The pain precedes the wound. The scream precedes the fear. The sequence is intact, but the direction is wrong. You try to tell yourself it's stress, a vivid hallucination, a waking nightmare too vivid for comfort. But the world doesn't let you return to normal. You go to the kitchen and hear the crash of something breaking, but nothing has fallen yet. You glance around in confusion, and then, after several seconds, the mug on the counter wobbles, slides, and crashes to the ground. It feels like time is slipping sideways, like your life is unfolding through a mirror pointed in the wrong direction. You experience the outcome and only afterward watch the cause meander slowly toward you, indifferent to the confusion it leaves in its wake. Outside, the effect is universal. You hear car horns blare before tires screech. Dogs bark before they notice intruders. Rain soaks your clothes before the clouds darken. People shout apologies before bumping into you. Laughter echoes before the jokes. It all continues to unravel in perfect reverse. You're not moving backward. You're still walking forward, speaking, thinking, but the events around you arrive in the wrong order. You see a man suddenly flinch and clutch his side, only to watch a cyclist slam into him seconds later. Cause and effect still exist, but the timing has flipped. And human logic, your oldest ally, is failing. Your brain, trained from birth to seek pattern, order, and flow, begins to rebel. You expect the world to make sense. You expect sequences, chains of reason, the reliable symmetry of before and after, but now every moment is disjointed. You cry out in shock before the surprise hits. You wince in pain before the injury. You gasp at the sight of flames before the spark has appeared. The mind scrambles to keep up, running backward through memories it hasn't formed yet, trying to connect a thread whose starting point no longer exists. You try to adapt. You try to think in reverse. If this just happened, what might have caused it? If you're feeling something now, what might be about to occur? But the effort is exhausting. Your thoughts slow, tangled in loops of retrograde reasoning. You become cautious, hesitant, afraid to speak because you no longer know what might come out of your mouth next. You begin to avoid touching anything, stepping back from every interaction, unsure if your own actions will have already triggered something that has yet to happen. You feel as if you're being punished for trying to understand something your biology was never meant to comprehend. Sleep becomes worse. You dream in reverse too, waking at the end and working backward toward the beginning. You feel emotions and only later see the images that caused them. You wake up remembering conclusions but not how they formed. Your memories feel smudged, as though someone dragged a hand across the timeline, blurring cause into consequence. You lose track of what's real and what's delayed. Even your own emotions begin to betray you. You feel waves of guilt before your mistakes, regret before your decisions, love before you've met the one who inspires it. One day you burn your arm on the stove. You yelp a full second before your hand even moves toward it. You try to stop yourself, but it's too late. You've already reacted to the future. The moment is inevitable. You wonder if this is what fate feels like, seeing the consequence coming and still being unable to prevent the cause. Time used to feel like freedom, a path you walked step by step. Now it feels like a river in reverse, dragging you upstream through rapids you already know by name, and every day the flow grows stronger. People around you behave as if nothing's wrong. They smile, they go about their routines, but you can tell it's not the same. You watch a woman burst into tears before her phone rings with bad news. A child clutches their scraped knees seconds before falling. A man collapses from grief moments before reading the letter that delivers it. Everyone's experiencing it, but no one is talking about it. Maybe they're too afraid. Maybe the reversal has already infected their thoughts, their sense of order. Or maybe, terrifyingly, this is the new normal, and you're the only one still trying to hold on to the old logic. You stop trusting clocks. They still tick forward, but they lie. They pretend the world still unfolds in a linear rhythm. But now, minutes are meaningless. Time does not behave as it once did. You mark each moment not by what you do, but by what's already been done to you. You feel nausea before the sickness, relief before the resolution. You live in a feedback loop where all things arrive too late to make sense and too early to respond, and it's slowly breaking something inside you. Eventually, your own sense of self begins to fracture. If you don't choose your reactions, if they arrive before the stimulus, then what are you? A witness? A puppet? A shell reliving moments in the wrong order? You watch your hands move and wonder if they've already acted without your knowledge. You speak and then realize what you were going to say. You think and then realize it wasn't a thought. It was a ripple from an effect you haven't yet experienced. Your agency erodes, like sand pulled backward by the tide. You fear. You're becoming a vessel for events rather than their architect. And then you start to notice the world itself changing. Not just in order, but in form. Buildings flicker, showing cracks before they form. Trees drop their leaves before the wind blows. Light seems to shift direction, shadows moving in ways that make no physical sense. People you know begin reacting to things that haven't happened in your presence. It's as if the entire world is caught in a web of anticipation, every event dragging its consequence behind it like a shadow with its own will. And you begin to wonder, what if this is not a malfunction? What if this is a correction? What if the forward flow of time was the illusion? What if our lives have always unfolded this way, and the truth is only now beginning to surface? What if we are not cause-born creatures at all, but backward-looking echoes, trapped in the memory of a universe collapsing into itself? You stare at the stars and wonder if the light reaching you now is not from long ago, but from moments that haven't yet come, illuminating you in reverse. You question the moment of your birth, the moment of your death, and whether the two were ever separate. And slowly, a different kind of stillness settles into you. Not peace, not clarity, just resignation. You can no longer plan, no longer predict. You live in a loop that mocks the very concept of logic. You feel as if you're walking through a riddle, an equation written in reverse, where the solution comes first and the question never reveals itself. You stop trying to make sense of it. You let yourself feel the consequence before the deed. You accept the wound before the weapon. You learn to flinch in preparation for the past. And somewhere inside that silent unraveling, you understand something final. The story isn't broken. It was never written for your kind of mind. You were built to follow, to build lines from dots, to chase the sun from morning to dusk. But now the sun rises after the light, and the shadow falls before the object moves, and your place in the world is not to understand, but to endure. You no longer scream when the pain comes first. You no longer question the scream that arrives before the pain. You just wait, watch, breathe. You move backward through forward time and let the world collapse in reverse all around you. Because next no longer follows before, and you no longer need it to. The last observer. You awaken to silence, not the usual kind, not the distant hum of a world still moving around you, but a stillness that feels unnatural, intentional, absolute. No car engines in the distance, no bird song, not even the rustle of wind against your window. The air itself feels frozen, thick with the absence of motion. For a while, you lie in bed, waiting for some familiar sound to resume the rhythm of normal life, but nothing comes. Not even your heartbeat seems to echo properly, and a strange thought creeps into your mind, quiet at first, but growing louder with each breath. Am I the only one left? You get up and walk through the rooms of your home. Everything is where it should be, dishes on the counter, furniture unmoved, the calendar still marked with yesterday's date, but no messages, no missed calls, no signs of life. You go outside. The sky is a still blue, painted like a backdrop. Leaves hang from trees in perfect suspension, unmoved by breeze. You call out. No response. You knock on neighbors' doors. No footsteps, no creaks. The houses feel like set pieces, waiting for actors who never arrived. The streets are empty but not abandoned. Everything looks freshly paused, as though the world was mid-step when something, or someone, hit the switch. At first, you tell yourself there must be others, people hiding, sleeping inside buildings. Maybe some catastrophe occurred, something selective, something strange. But the more you search, the more the world proves itself vacant. Not ruined, not dead, just stopped. The stores are stocked, the lights are on, traffic lights still blink, but nothing moves unless you do. You begin to notice that when you turn your back, shadows shift in ways they shouldn't. When you look away from a clock, the second hand slows. You stare at a fly midair, and only when you approach does it resume its buzz, as if reality only knows how to move when it's being watched. You test the boundaries. You stare at clouds and time their drift. They move only when your eyes are open. You sit still for hours, trying not to blink. When you finally give in and close your eyes, even for a few seconds, you feel something in the air shift. When you open them again, everything is where you left it, but nothing has changed. The sun hasn't moved. The air hasn't stirred. And then the most terrifying realization hits you with a weight that makes your knees buckle. It's not just that you're alone. It's that you're the only one observing. From that point on, it becomes clear. The world isn't running on its own. It's running because you are watching it. Every gust of wind, every flicker of light, every turning gear is responding to your presence like a stage play, cued by the arrival of its final audience. And when you are not watching, it waits. Not maliciously, not with intent, just blankly, obediently. You lie in bed one night and force your eyes to stay open, and as long as you remain conscious, the moon moves across the sky. But the moment you begin to drift, time halts again. The moon stalls mid-climb, the wind dies, the world ceases to continue. Sleep becomes dangerous, not because of nightmares, but because you now understand the weight of your awareness. The moment your consciousness leaves, everything stalls, held in place, suspended until your return. You try staying awake for longer and longer stretches, drinking coffee, pacing, letting music play in loops, but music too only continues when you're listening. Otherwise, it freezes mid-note, like a record paused by an unseen hand. You set cameras to monitor the world while you sleep, but they catch nothing. Just silence. Just stillness. Even machines seem to obey this strange dependency. You begin to fear that your own mind is the battery of existence itself. You start to treat the world like a delicate machine, cautiously, deliberately. You speak aloud just to hear something beyond your thoughts. You read books, not for their stories, but to keep the words alive. You eat not because you're hungry, but because the act affirms continuity. And most of all, you resist sleep. Because in those moments just before you drift off, when your eyelids grow heavy and your thoughts begin to fade, you feel the world exhale one last time, and then nothing. No dreams, no sound, no time. Only a dark, silent pause, like a program waiting for the signal to resume. You begin to wonder how long this has been the case. Was the world ever real in the way you believed? Or has it always been responsive, always been reactive, waiting for you to observe it into motion? Were the people you once loved truly autonomous, or were they rendered only when you saw them? You recall conversations, moments, emotions, but now they feel like shadows projected on a screen. Echoes programmed to seem real only while your attention was cast upon them. The past begins to feel unreliable, as if it exists only because you remember it, and not the other way around. Eventually, you begin to forget how it felt to be one among many. The sound of multiple lives overlapping, the chaos of cities, the warm interruptions of friendship. These things feel like myths now. You are not lonely in the traditional sense. Loneliness implies someone missing. But in your case, there is no one to miss. There is only you and the world that waits for your eyes to open each day. You no longer speak much because there's no one to answer. You no longer ask questions because even questions require a listener. You live not in isolation, but in a strange form of solipsistic stewardship. And then one day you lie down and don't get up, not because you're tired, but because you want to know what will happen. You close your eyes and make no plan to open them again. You let your breathing slow, your thoughts fade. You surrender to the dark, and in that stillness you expect collapse. You expect the universe to dissolve, but instead you feel something else. Not ending, but waiting. The world doesn't die, it simply stops. Like an actor frozen mid-scene, the sun pausing mid-arc, the tide halting mid-pull. There is no judgment, no despair, just suspension. A universe with no witness, holding its breath. You open your eyes again, and in that instant the wind returns. The trees sway, the clouds resume their journey, the silence breaks, and you realize the truth, not of your power, but of your role. You are not the master of the world. You are its last thread, its final strand of observation. As long as you remain awake, aware, the machinery of reality has reason to continue. But should you vanish, should your mind dissolve, your consciousness fade, everything else will follow, not because it hates you, not because it loves you, but because without you, there is no one left to watch. And so you continue, not with joy, not with despair, but with resolve. You become the watcher, the lone eye, the final audience, the one for whom the stars still shine, the rivers still flow, the trees still breathe. You move through the world with reverence, knowing each step, each breath, each blink is a thread holding the universe together. You eat simply, you walk gently, you whisper thanks to the silence. And sometimes, in moments when the sky grows dim and your eyes grow heavy, you wonder, if you are the last observer, who watched you awaken? But there is no answer, only the stillness, only the quiet hum of a universe waiting to be seen.